All right, good evening. I have 6:30. Today is Monday, December 2nd, 2019. I'm here to call the Columbus Common Council public hearing for the 2020 proposed budget to order. When you're ready, could you please take a roll call, Pat?
Gray,
Present.
Johnson,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Ryan is excused, Tylen,
Here.
Tome,
Here.
Traxler.
Here.
Thank you. If able, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. Next item is to approve the agenda. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Number 5, the public hearing on the proposed 2020 budget for the city of Columbus. If I could get a motion and a second to open the public hearing, please.
Make a motion to open the public hearing. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing for the proposed 2020 budget for the city of Columbus. Any discussion on that? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now open. We do have a short presentation, I believe, from Finance Director Clerk Kim Manley. Hi, Kim.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm just going to run through a few slides here. I have a short PowerPoint to talk about our 2020 budget. Just kind of an overview of, where we are and how we got to where we are. What's happening tonight is we're holding a public hearing, which is required by statute in order for municipalities to adopt a budget. Once we get through the public hearing, the City Council will take action during the regular part of the meeting to adopt the budgets and authorize the clerk to levy taxes across the properties in Columbus. How did we get here? A lot of people don't really understand what the budget process is, so what I really tried to do is just kind of narrow it down into a nutshell. Each year, city departments will prepare their budgets. They'll bring them to the council for consideration. And each department is unique, like I mentioned in the PowerPoint. Everything from plowing streets, putting out fires, helping people vote, swimming, reading a book for the library, providing a park shelter to have a picnic in. All of the departments have diverse needs to operate each year. As the department heads come to the council, they present their budgets, and the council ultimately makes a decision on what's going to be included in each operating budget for the year. Once we know what those operating expenses are and we know what the revenue sources are that we have for that upcoming year, that gap becomes what the amount is that the city would need to levy in taxes to be able to cover the entire budget. So in preparing the 2020 budgets, considering all of the funds, the City Council, by consensus so far, because we have not approved the resolutions to levy any taxes, has by consensus approved $3,351,133 in taxes for 2020, which would be on your 2019 tax bill. Using this dollar amount, we see an increase of 28 cents per thousand from last year's tax rate. This year is $7.82 for a pre-TIF taxing rate, and last year it was $7.54. Some of the highlights and changes in the budget: we are not looking at a significant difference in staffing, but we are including a part-time position. It's 20 hours per week between the Recreation and Senior Center. This position will help with some of the administrative duties and support for both of the directors there. Also, we're looking into additional funding for crossing guards and exploring where we would put those crossing guards that would best benefit the children that are walking back and forth to school. Also included in the 2020 budget, we're looking at a market revaluation. The city's assessment ratio dropped to 90.4% in 2019. And by state laws, we're required to be between 90 and 110%. We dropped a full 6 points in 1 year, which is pretty significant. And due to that, we're going to do what they call a market revaluation, meaning that in 2017, they went through all of the homes in the city. They'll have that information on file, but what they'll be looking at are things like building permits, new construction, and then doing some updates to the overall values of the property in the city. For trash and recycling, new in 2020, we moved the recycling center costs to the trash and recycling center charge that you see on your tax bill. Last year, we charged everybody $1.61, wouldn't that be nice? $161 a year, or $13.33 per month for your trash and recycling pickup every week. Proposed in the 2020 budget is $14 per month, or $168 per year. So that's just a change of 67 cents more per month for that trash and recycling going onto the charge versus on your tax bill. Emergency Medical Services District. The city is part of a larger district with multiple municipalities. The cost is going to remain the same in 2020. The contract for those services is up at the end of 2020. Right now, the city pays $18.77 per person for paramedic services. Municipal Court is a new venture that actually started in 2020. It started in May, so it wasn't here for a full year. 2020 will be the first full year that the city will operate its own municipal court. Debt service, the payments will increase in 2020. The total amount of debt service payments for the city is $1,140,117. But once you take off the special assessment revenues, the reimbursement from other funds, and the use of restricted or reserved funds, the actual tax levy will be $780,470. So it's an increase of $66,269 from last year. New this year is Tax Incremental District number 5. This district was created to help a local business, G.D. Roberts, with a possible expansion, along with a couple of other businesses in the area who have also expressed a desire to expand. And a TIF district is a good resource for those businesses to be able to make those expansions possible. Capital Projects Fund. In 2019, the city accomplished a number of things. We purchased a piece of equipment for the fire department. We purchased an end loader for the Public Works Department. We made some improvements to the recycling center. We paid off the last payment on the police squads. And we are paying continued engineering costs for the Farnham Street project will be in 2022, which is in cooperation with the Department of Transportation, along with engineering to start work on the 2020 street reconstruction project. In 2020, work is going to continue on unveiling the Roadmap 2050 project. We're going to continue to do improvements to the recycling center, work on the police department building facade, and we'll be continuing to partner with the Department of Transportation on engineering costs for the Farnham Street or Highway 89 project. New in 2020 is the city loan program. The city started a small loan program this year. We hope to have enough money available so that we can actually start making this available to businesses in 2021. And the Community Development Authority is going to work on guidelines so that they can put this loan program together, create applications, give people an opportunity to apply for those small business loans. And economic development, we're going to be working on a facade program for local businesses, bring back the Business Appreciation and Recognition Luncheon, and as always, our Economic Development Director continues to promote the city. Sewer utility budget highlights. Something that's a little different that people don't always think of is the sewer utility is not funded by real estate taxes. It's funded solely by user fees. So that's something that makes it a little bit different from the general fund budgets that we were talking about just previously. Planned in 2020, the sewer utility is planning to participate in the Hibbard Street project. It's been the policy of the city that the utilities pay their share of the utility costs when we do road reconstruction projects. So the utilities for Hibbard Street are something that the utility has in its budget for 2020. Also in 2020, we're going to finish the roofing projects. We authorized, or I should say the council authorized re-roofing most of the buildings in and at the wastewater treatment plant. We have another building to finish this year in like a two-phase process. So that is also included in the sewer utilities budget for 2020. The next item really pertains to new regulations by the Department of Natural Resources. Several years back, the Department of Natural Resources created new guidelines for phosphorus limits in local watersheds. And so all wastewater treatment plants have to meet those regulations. As part of that, municipalities or utilities can work to do water quality trading, which helps them to meet those phosphorus limits. And we are currently working with local farmers right now to help with water runoff and things that would create phosphorus going into the local watersheds. We're going to continue to do that in 2020. And then lastly, a rate study is planned for 2020, which is required to be done every 2 years by our bond covenants. And basically that's meant to make sure that the utility is always making enough in user fees to be able to pay off all of its debt and meet its operational costs. So that's why that sewer rate study is required every 2 years. New in 2020, we do have some capital projects brewing. Many of you know already that the city is undertaking the reconstruction of Hibbard Street. This project will require a borrowing of about $1.5 million to complete, and the project is slated to be completed in late 2020. We have other city projects slated. These mainly pertain to infrastructure repairs. We have a number of facilities that need some work. The police department, the city hall, the aquatic center, public works, salt storage building, and the senior center. We're also looking at doing more road work with this borrowing for 2020, mainly mill and overlays, police department radio replacements, and then some equipment replacements for public works, replacing a 1992 and a 1997 piece of equipment, along with the possible replacement of the street sweeper. And if all of these are done, we're looking to borrow about $1 million to complete those projects. Lastly, the sewer utility. The sewer utility is going to pay cash for its share of the Hibbard Street project because we've been proactive in putting a little bit of money away, just like everybody does at home. You're going to make a purchase, you put something in savings so that you can make sure that you can take care of that. Basically the same principle. The sewer utility is required to have what they call replacement funds. We've got enough money that we can take care of the sewer utility share of the Hibbard Street project. However, the Huber screen project, which is a 1984 screen, which is one of the original screens that was in the building, needs to be replaced. And that project is considerably more expensive. We're also looking at doing some work on sludge storage capacity, which means the leftovers from after everything has been processed. And that's looking at about a $1.5 million in revenue bonds. So total proposed borrowings or loans for next year are projected right now at about $4 million. What does this actually mean for your tax bill? You know, when you look at your tax bill, you're going to look and you're going to see that you're taxed by multiple entities. And they basically go through the same process we do. They have expenditures, they have revenues, and that gap that they have actually is what they need to also levy in taxes. And so what they do when they get those numbers pulled together, they send a levy certificate to the clerk and they say, you have to levy X number of dollars across all of the property within your community. They've done that all now. We've got all of those numbers, so we know exactly what they're asking us to actually levy dollars for. So when you look at all of that together, along with the credits, we're looking at a mill rate of $23 and basically 4 cents for the 2019 tax bill, which is a 5.24% increase. In dollars, it translates to $1.14 per thousand from last year. The nice thing is we did see some increases in the credits that you see on your tax bill. The lottery credit went from $154.10 last year to $171.31. So it's a little bit more by about $17.21. On the flip side, the first dollar credit was reduced slightly. So that's kind of the budget in the nutshell. Kind of gives you a picture of where we ended up with where the mill rate will look, what the mill rate would look like on your tax bill in December. And I'll open it to any questions if anybody has any. Council or people?
Kim, since it's just one page, did you want to run through the amendments as well? And then we can just kind of open up the public hearing to see if anyone wanted to comment. Thank you, Kim.
Sounds good. We have 3 amendments pending, and amendments basically occurred after the budget was kind of pulled together and published and sent out to the council members, and the public hearing notice was created. So instead of trying to just add them to the budget and move forward, we are treating them as separate items so that they're kind of brought to the forefront. The first is that there's an employment agreement with our Public Works Director that requires a certain change in salary, and that will translate to an amendment of $4,013. In the senior center, there's an additional hours being requested for the administrative assistant from 24 to 28. The total impact there is $3,427.50. And then we have a developer payment. And this is kind of an egg-chicken scenario. We have to calculate this reimbursement to the developer, but you have to have a mill rate to be able to calculate the reimbursement. Once we knew what the mill rate was, I could go back and recalculate it to make sure that it was accurate. We have an impact of about $7,500 there that would be under consideration tonight as an amendment.
All right. Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
This is a public hearing for the proposed 2020 budget, so I will ask 3 times. This will be my first. Is anyone present this evening that wished to speak at this public hearing on the proposed 2020 city budget? I see no one. I'm obligated to ask for a second time if there's anyone present that wished to speak at this public hearing for the 2020 proposed budget. See no one, and for a third and final time, we'll ask if there's anyone present this evening that wished to speak at the public hearing for the 2020 proposed budget. See no one indicating they wish to speak, so we can close the public hearing. All right, we will continue on from the public hearing into our regularly scheduled council meeting. Is that all right? Do we need to take a recess, or are we good on moving forward, everyone? Good. Okay. Time is 6:49. We'll be moving into the Columbus Common Council regularly scheduled meeting for Monday, December 2nd, 2019. Correspondence and communications is first. I did not grab the sheet back there. Pat, could you check and see for me? Thank you, Pat. Yeah, I have 2 people signed up this evening. The first one is Beth Altschwager. Beth, if you could just come up to the podium, state your name and address, please. There's a little face button. I think you might know. There you go.
I'm Beth Allschwager. I live at 553 West James Street, and I'm here this evening to talk about the Lifestar ambulance service. A little over a week ago, I took my husband to the hospital with chest pains. I suppose I should have called the ambulance at that time, but I did not. And after he had tests run, it was determined he needed to be transported to Madison to the hospital. But lo and behold, there would be a 2-hour delay because Lifestar was out on a call, And the second ambulance that they have is being held for 911 calls. So you'll have to wait about 2 hours. We're looking for someone to come to Columbus to take him. Well, it was about 40 minutes, and an ambulance from Madison did arrive and proceed to transport him to St. Mary's, where he ended up having triple bypass surgery. He is home already, but we're fine. But I just know that Lifestar is up for contract this coming year, and I just thought it should be brought to your attention that maybe we need the ambulance service looked at a little bit. Why do we have 2 ambulances and only one can go on a call at a time? So we just happen to be very fortunate this time. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Beth. All right, have another individual signed up, John Blaska, present. If you could just walk up to the podium and state your name and your address, please. You're on.
Sorry. John Blaska, and I was here just to answer questions on the agenda items for Kester Ridge, 900 Avalon.
You can speak during the agenda item if you wish.
I kind of figured, but I thought I'd
Okay.
answer your question.
Thank you for being official. All right. Was there anyone else here this evening that did not get a chance to sign up for correspondence and communications that wish to speak? Seeing none, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda for the evening, we have the Council and Committee of the Whole minutes for November 19th, 2019, and applications for operators licenses for the term of July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2021. Any questions on the consent agenda? The 2 names for the operators licenses are Linda Leighton and Juan Guerrero. If there's no questions on the consent agenda, I'll entertain any action on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. On to new business number 1, review and take action on amendments to the 2020 general fund and capital project budgets for 2020. This mess up here.
Mayor,
Yes, Dave.
when I reviewed the budget and I was advised about these pending amendments to the budget by the finance director, I suggested that these amendments be placed on the agenda that you have before you. You can see in the staff report, they're numbered 1, 2, 3. And I would suggest that you consider those individually, whether you're going to approve them or not, before you adopt the final budget and set the tax levy.
Okay.
So staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions from the council on the amendments that were outlined in the presentation?
Quick
Andy?
question. It says 2020 general fund and capital projects budgets. Which item is related to capital projects in these 3?
Kim?
We have levy in the capital projects that we can use to offset the requested increases in the general fund. So that would be the impact to the capital projects budget.
Thanks.
Yeah, I might add, there's Kim did a compilation. Kim did a compilation that's on the back of that report that you can see the impact of each of those amendments on the budget. And none of the amendments have an impact on the general levy because of the use of the capital funds, if you so choose to do that.
Ed?
Are we using the disposal of fixed asset account in this budget? Is that being drawn down? That we currently have a balance in there.
Right.
Is that subsumed within this budget?
There was no specific action, actually taken by the council during the budget discussions, but I do have that included in the general obligation note discussions that money could be potentially used to help pay for replacement, say the truck for public works, or go towards another, you know, the senior center roof, I mean, we could use that money for just about anything. It just would be what the council's will would be as to where you would want to see those dollars used.
So it's, as this budget stands, it's not being used.
Right.
And we're budgeting certain amounts for those things that you're talking about.
Were you not, the money that's in the capital projects fund right now for a levy is our dollars that were in excess of what we needed but met the levy limit, which was the $3,351,133. The projects that we're planning to do in the capital projects fund right now, we can meet with existing cash on hand. But the way our policy reads for the disposal of fixed asset use of those funds, there has to be an actual request made of the council to use those funds. At this point in time, we're talking about using them, but we really haven't found a home for the funds yet.
Okay.
So that's on my radar to make sure that's included in our discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? I see none. What is the will of the council on the amendments that have been presented? Ready to approve the amendments? Or did you want to have further discussion?
I mean, I'm ready to move forward with it. Listening to interim city administrator, do we need to do three different, should we do three different motions?
I would suggest you do that.
Okay. Agreed. Okay. And I'll make a motion to accept the item number 1, which was the employment agreement with the Public Works Director for a total impact of $4,013.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the budget amendment for 2020 for the salary for the Public Works Director in the amount of $4,013. Is there any discussion on that motion? If none, can we please take a roll call, Pat?
Johnson? Reed? Tylen? Traxler?
Aye.
Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Then on to the Senior Center.
I'll just keep going here. I'll make a motion to accept the amendment for the Senior Center Administrative Assistant wage adjustment for, hours adjustment for a total impact of $3,427.50.
We have a motion, a second to approve the second amendment to the 2020 general fund for the Senior Center in the amount of $3,427.50. Is there any discussion on that motion? If there's no discussion, Pat, could you please take a roll call for us?
Reed? Tylen?
Aye.
Traxler?
Aye.
Gray? Johnson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
And finally, I'll make a motion to accept item number 3, developer payment to Accurate Interpack with the total impact of $7,500.
Have a motion and a second to approve the amendment of the developer payment in the total amount of $7,500 for the proposed 2020 general fund budget. Any discussion on that motion? If there's no discussion, could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Tylen? Traxler?
Aye.
Gray? Johnson?
Aye.
Reed? Motion carries.
All right, all 3 amendments have been approved then. Can we move on to item number 2 at this time then? Okay. New business number 2, consider and take action on resolution 25-19, a resolution for budget adoption and approval of a tax levy for the city of Columbus and tax incremental districts. Yes, Steve.
Defer to the city attorney, but now you have this resolution to adopt the budget for 2020 and set the tax levy, and I would suggest that you make a motion to do that as amended. The amendments that you just approved.
Thank you.
Correct? Okay.
Any questions from the council?
make a motion. Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you're on it.
I move to adopt Resolution 25-19 to approve the 2020 budgets for all funds as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 25-19 as amended, resolution for budget adoption and approval of a tax levy for the City of Columbus and tax incremental districts. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I guess I just want to express my disappointment that we didn't use the disposal of fixed asset fund earlier and capture some of that in this budget, but I understand that we'll be using it next year, so thank you.
Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, Pat, could we please take a roll call?
Tylen?
Aye.
Traxler?
Aye.
Gray? Johnson?
Aye.
Reed? Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item number 3, consider and take action on Resolution 26-19, resolution for the City of Columbus Public Sewer Utility Budget Adoption. Again, the city has a budget, the sewer utility has a budget, and that needs to be approved separately. Any discussion on the sewer budget? If there are no questions or discussion, I'll entertain any action then on new business number 3.
I'll move to adopt Resolution 2619, a budget for budget adoption for the sewer utilities 2020 budget.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 26-19 for the City of Columbus Public Sewer Utility Budget Adoption. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion on the motion, could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Traxler?
Aye.
Gray? Johnson?
Aye.
Reed? Tylen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. On to item number 4 then. Consider and take action on the DPW fixed assets for disposal for 2019. There was a list that was submitted to the Committee of the Whole at our last meeting with some older items that DPW Director Zach Naven has identified that are no longer needed, so he's going through the process and the policy of the disposal of those items to take them to auction. I don't think there were many questions on these at the last meeting. If there are no, Ed, did you have a question?
Are we following the policy of offering these things to other departments and all that? Are we at the step of going to auction, or we worked through the policy as existed? Good, great, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Zach is signifying yes, that has occurred, so this is the final step okay. Any other questions from the council? If there are no further questions, I'll entertain action on item number 4.
I'll move to approve the disposal of DPW fixed assets per our agenda item to be auctioned off, which is about as poorly worded as I can make a motion. That was word soup. I will move to allow DPW to proceed to auction on the assets that are ready for disposal.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the disposal of the fixed assets from DPW for 2019 as listed in our packet. Is there any discussion on that motion? If there's no further discussion, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. New business number 5, consider and take action on resolution 24-19 for city to accept Woods Lane. This has come through the Committee of the Whole for some discussion. I believe that there was, let's see, I don't know if there was a punch list associated with the street dedication or not, Paul?
No, there
Okay.
is not.
That's a
As
separate
far-
item after this?
That is correct.
Okay. The street will be dedicated to the city, then the city will be able to plow the street this winter, so. Any discussion on item number 5? No discussion? Don't entertain any motion.
Motion to approve accepting Woods Lane at Highland Ridge. Sorry, resolution 24-19.
Tongue-tied tonight.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept Resolution 24-19 for the city to accept Woods Lane as a city street. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. On to number 6. Consider and take action on Woods at Highland Ridge to combine Phase 1 and Phase 2 development agreement and require one letter of credit. Paul, can you just give the overview on that?
Sure. In addition to the developer requesting that Woods Lane be accepted by the city and then turned over to the city, the developer has also requested that one of his letters of credit be released and his other letter of credit be reduced. The Highland Ridge, the Woods at Highland Ridge project was built out in 2 phases, and the work has been done to the work has been done substantially. There are still a few things remaining on a punch list that Jason is monitoring and working on with the developer to get completely filled out. But instead of maintaining the 2 letters of credit, it is being recommended by staff that the 2 letters be released and in exchange 1 new letter be posted in an amount equal to cover all of the work that would still need to be done in the spring of 2020. There's some concrete work, there's some erosion control work, and a little bit of cleanup left to do out there to take care or to fully complete the project. So the agreement that is before you is to release the 2 existing letters of credit upon the developer posting a new letter of credit for $25,151, which we estimate to be substantial enough to cover all the costs if the developer should not finish in the spring.
And that would be extended to June 1st of 2020.
Right. It is our sincere hope that by June 1 of 2020, this will all be done.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Paul. Any questions from the council on this? All right. If there's no further questions, I'll entertain any action on the Woods at Highland Ridge development agreement.
Basically, your motion tonight will be to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute the agreement if you're so inclined.
Ian?
I'll move to combine Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the development agreement and to replace the 2 letters of credit upon the creating a new letter of credit in the amount of $25,151.
All right, we have a motion and a second to take action and to combine Phase 1 and Phase 2 letters of credit into one, the amount of $25,151, set to expire June 1st, 2020. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, let's take a roll call, please.
Traxler.
Aye.
Gray. Johnson.
Aye.
Reed. Tylen. Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item number 7, consider and take action on a 2020 MOU for the nutrition site at the senior center. We have an annual agreement with the county meal program that is served at the senior center here. We receive a small sum of money, $1,020 annually, to provide that site for meals for seniors there. So this just needs to be approved for providing that service next year at the senior center. Are there any additional questions? Kim is here. I know this has been reviewed at the committee of the whole already. If there are no questions, I'll entertain action on item number 7.
I'll make a motion to approve the MOU for the 2020 MOU for the nutrition site for the senior center.
A motion, a second, to approve the MOU for the 2020 nutrition site at the senior center. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to number 8, consider and take action on the senior center request to start a Facebook page. This is just housekeeping. Kim had mentioned during the budget she'd like to activate a Facebook page to help promote all the wonderful events that they host at the senior center and also help to promote other city activities. So this is just going through the process and the policy to create that page. Unless there's any questions, I'll entertain any motion from the council to approve the beginning of a new Facebook page for the senior center.
Motion to approve the creation of a senior center Facebook page.
Motion is second to approve a Facebook page for the senior center. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 9 is also a part of that. Just updating the social media policy to add the senior center into that policy, so we're aware that that page exists. Any discussion on that? If none, entertain any action on number 9.
Motion to add senior center to the social media policy listing.
Motion and a second to add the senior center to the social media policy. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Kim. Number 10, consider and take action on Resolution 22-19 to recognize the creation of TIF number 5 and Fund number 260. Again, this is housekeeping of having to approve those new funds. Fund 260, I believe, was for the future city loan program, which has not been set up yet, but this allows us to do that. And then TIF 5 doesn't have any activity, but we have it on the books for this year. Any questions on this? If there are no questions, I'll entertain any action on new business number 10, please.
Make a motion to accept Resolution 22-9 to recognize the creation of TIF 5 and Fund 260. What did I say? 22-19.
Motion and a second to approve Resolution 22-19 to recognize the creation of TIF number 5 and Fund number 260. Any discussion on that? If none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item number 11, consider and take action on a quote from Envirotech Equipment for repairs for televising the camera at the wastewater treatment plant. We probably purchased this camera about 3-4 years ago, I'm thinking. Other than that, we had contracted those services out, so I think that the cameras serve the wastewater utility very well, and there are some needed repairs. This was within the budget as well, so just need approval to expend that money to repair the televising camera for the wastewater treatment plant. Any questions or concerns? If none, I'll entertain any action on item number 11.
Move that we authorize repair of the wastewater treatment plant televising camera in the amount listed in our packet.
A motion and a second to approve the quote from Envirotech Equipment for the repairs for the televising camera at the wastewater treatment plant. In the packet, it indicates $2,326.83. Any discussion on that motion? If none, can we please take a roll call?
Gray. Johnson.
Aye.
Reed. Tylen. Traxler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Number 12, consider and take action on general engineering building inspection contract for 2020. Again, this is somewhat time sensitive as we have to have the new agreement in place by the end of this year. Did a quick pass on this at the committee of the whole discussion. I don't think there were any concerns or many concerns brought up at that time. Are there any questions this evening on the building inspection contract for 2020 with general engineering? This would be continuing our current services with general engineering as the building inspector for the city of Columbus. If there are no questions, I'll entertain any action on item number 12.
Make a motion to approve the general engineering building inspection contract for 2020.
Have a motion and a second to approve the general engineering building inspection contract for 2020. Any discussion on the motion? Ed?
Paul, did you review this contract?
I did, and I did not have anything in particular that jumped out at me to look as it would be problematic.
Very good, thank you.
All right. If there are no further questions, could we please take a roll call on that, Pat?
Johnson. Reed. Tylen. Traxler.
Aye.
Gray. Motion carries.
Thank you. On to number 13, consider and take action on the city administrator's position description, salary range, position announcement, and schedule for recruitment. This has gone through the committee of the whole for discussion as well, to have a timeline for the recruitment of the next city administrator, also a salary range, and a position description, and an announcement. Any questions on this one? If there are no questions, I'll entertain any action from the council on item number 13.
I'll make a motion to approve the city administrator position description, salary range, position announcement, and schedule for recruitment.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the city administrator position description, salary range, position announcement, and schedule for recruitment. I'll be working through public administration associates for the recruitment and the selection process. Any further discussion on that? There's no discussion. Could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Reed. Tylen. Traxler.
Aye.
Gray. Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Number 14, consider and take action on claims in the amount of $270,873.34. Are there any questions on the claims? Seeing none, I'll entertain any action on the claims in the amount read.
Motion to approve the claims in the amount of $270,873.34.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the city claims in the amount read. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, can we please take a roll call, Pat?
Tylen.
Aye.
Traxler.
Aye.
Gray. Johnson. Reed. Motion carries.
All right, thank you. On to report of city officers. David, did you have anything you wanted to share this evening?
Well, I've booked 2 weeks, and I've booked 2 weeks, and it's gone very well. The staff has been very cooperative and professional, and just settling into the schedule of being here on Monday and Tuesdays for council meetings, Wednesday and Thursday, and of course, there's flexibility there based on needed meetings as directed by the mayor. I had my first tour of the city with Matt, the planner. That went very well, and I plan to kind of work through that process with each of the departments. Plan to meet with Lisa to talk about social media and following up with your direction that the mayor and I meet with the EMS group to discuss our concerns about the addition of a couple new communities in the EMS group or the district, and how that impacts the community and the services for EMS. So we're following up on that. I did talk with Kim, and she distributed an email to you about a meeting regarding, a special meeting regarding capital projects and borrowing. And I think that many of you have responded to meet next Tuesday, the 10th, but we're still looking for confirmation on that, so you might be thinking about that. Unless you want to give us your feedback tonight, we'll plan accordingly for that. And I do appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted to report that it is going very well, and I endeavor to be efficient with my time and effective, and continue to strive to keep you informed. So you can expect a weekly report. I trust that you're all receiving that, my email and my activity report. I try to focus on the major things and make notes of things that are coming up that I intend to focus on as far as priorities, and stay within, the 25, 30 hours a week. But of course, as I said, if I need to be somewhere, then as directed by the mayor, I'll be there. I always appreciated the development group agreeing to meet on Thursday morning. Again, I think that's more efficient for you as far as my time. They've been meeting every other Friday morning, so we'll have our first Thursday meeting this Thursday, and I plan to be a part of that as well. Any questions?
Thank you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, did you have something you wanted to add? Nope. Oh, thought you were going to poke at your button. All right. I only had a few things, hoping everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday. That's why I have a very short report. I had a great holiday, spent time with family. So just wanted to really thank city staff for the amount of work that they put into this year's annual budget. In my time here, this is really the first year we technically didn't have an executive budget. I guess it was more kind of a collaborative effort between staff and council. A lot of extra work for staff, that's acknowledged. And then having a vacancy as well creates even more work and responsibility for staff. So thanks so much for the efforts, and also for the council for all of the additional meetings that are required to get through this process. It's one of the biggest projects we do every year. So thanks to everybody for their efforts in the budget process. And then one final reminder, we're having our meeting this evening instead of Tuesday evening because the Canadian Pacific holiday train rolls into town tomorrow evening at approximately 9:05. We are the last stop of the evening, so hopefully everything stays on schedule all day long and they show up on time. The show will be running from 9:15 to 9:45. If you have not seen the holiday train, I highly encourage you to show up, help support their mission, which is stocking local food pantry shelves for the holiday. It's very grateful to have City of Columbus included in the holiday train stop every year. So that's all I had. Did anyone up here have anything they wish to add? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Two firsts and one second. To adjourn, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stand adjourned for a few minutes and we'll return with the committee of the whole meeting. Thank you. What's that?
We'll start at 7. All right, welcome back. The time is now 7:33 p.m. We'll go ahead and call to order the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole for Monday, December 2nd. Pat, if you could take a roll call, please. No, that's okay. We'll charge you back for that.
Gray. Johnson. Reed. Ryan is excused. Tylen. Tome. Traxler.
Here. This meeting was noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. First thing up is to approve the agenda. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, next up is citizen comments. I have one person signed up, Johnny Blaska, who will talk on that agenda item. I believe it's number 9. Yep. Is there anybody else that is present that did not get a chance to sign up that would like to speak? All right. Next up, I have department reports. We have a report for Lifestar for October. Any questions or comments about the department reports? All right. Seeing none. Next up, committee minutes. I have HLPC minutes from 11:14 and 11:21, and the Police and Fire Commission minutes from 10:29. Any questions or comments about the committee minutes? All right. First up tonight, I have number 7, discuss acceptance of donation to the fire department. And Fire Chief Randy Keene is here. Tell us all about it.
Good evening. I had a call several weeks ago from Doris Dingy, who's a longtime well-known Columbus resident, stating that she'd like to donate $4,000 to the fire department. So as per city policy, I'm here to get the approval from the council. Doris indicated that she would like the donation earmarked to something at the future fire station. And so her father, Henry Krenz, was on our department from 1931 to 1951, and then with the Reesville Fire Department for 23 years after that, after he moved to Reesville. So Doris, as I mentioned, longtime Columbus resident. She's 96 years young and still sharp as a tack. And so as I mentioned, she earmarked the money to go to the future fire station. I asked her if there was anything specific there that she wanted to put it towards. She didn't really have an answer, but it didn't take me long to come up with a suggestion for her. I mentioned that we could use it towards a historic display in the new fire station, and Doris loved the idea. Columbus is rich in remembering its history. There's the local historical society, the Historic Landmarks Preservation Group, and buildings around town such as the Park Pavilion in Rust Haven and the building that we're in, 1892 and still going. So I included in your packet a photo of the Lake Delton's fire station, which is relatively new, and what they've done with their historical feature in their department. So it's something like that that we would be looking at putting this donation towards. The family also indicated that they have some memorabilia to share to put in that as well, and I honestly can't think of a better use at the future station for her gift. So, any questions?
No. I'm very happy that Doris is wanting to donate $4,000 to our fire department. And I think
it's
I
nice
think
to
she
be up
found a
here.
good use.
It's nice to be up here not asking for money for once.
Yeah. And we appreciate that too.
So, pardon?
We appreciate that
Okay.
too.
So, actually, I'll probably be back up here in a few weeks too for a similar purpose. So, just to let you know about that. So maybe you're already aware of it, but. So anyway, if you will accept it in 2 weeks officially, Doris's son Don Robbins, who lives in Muskego, he would be here at that time. So.
Okay. I don't see any dissension here. No. We'll move that forward to the regular meeting on the 17th.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Next up, number 8, on-tech update and discussion of maintenance agreement. Looks like I have Mark here from on-tech, and Ryan is here too. Will be nearby to assist if needed. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so in the packet here, there is we have a couple of things that he wants to discuss. Number 1, the network discovery and maintenance options. I don't know if you want to give a quick overview.
Sure.
Of the 3 options that are being presented.
Yeah, so to kind of summarize, we wrapped up the server project about almost 2 weeks ago now, a little bit before the holiday. So with the investment into the equipment, there's been a few options that have been proposed to put into the 2020 budget for maintaining those IT systems. So Keegan and Ryan, who was the main technician here for the IT project, put together those recommendations. There's a total of 3 of them. The one that we'd like to recommend is option number 1. It's very similar to how we maintain many municipalities from a uptime perspective, from a compliancy perspective, and also more of a proactive approach. We offer those services on a monthly, annual, and 2-year agreement. So I'm happy to jump into the second packet, which kind of shows a little bit more of the technical detail regarding what we do on the servers and the desktops for monitoring and updating, but I also don't want to geek you guys as well, so I will leave the questions up to you.
Okay, so this might be for Kaylin. Whichever option we choose, have we put this in the budget for, approximately $25,000? Okay. But if we do a 2-year commitment, is that a one-time payment, or are we still paying that monthly?
We have some municipalities that pay it annually. Most pay it monthly. Up to you guys.
Okay. So I guess either scenario on option 1, we're still gonna fall a little short in the budget by about.
Yeah, the one thing to consider with option 1 is we do have non-contractual 4 hours bundled in each month. So that's $700 a month that you see there, or $675 in a 1-year or a 2-year agreement is non-contractual. So if there are no calls, we're seeing the service tickets start to decrease a little bit now that the systems are in place, and I would imagine over the next couple weeks that we'd get most of the glitches out. But if there are no service calls, then you're not going to see a bill for those. So I think what you're seeing there is probably more on the high end, with about $700 of that being flexible.
Okay. Can you just give us a quick overview on the difference between maybe option 1, which is kind of the mid-level, and option 3, which seems to be the lower level of the support?
Option 3 is really similar to option 1. Only difference is you don't have that non-contractual day for maintenance. So in option 1, what we're going to do is we're going to come to Kaylin, or we're going to come to any one of your department managers and say, hey, the 2nd Tuesday of every month or the 3rd Wednesday of every month, these are going to be our days in the office. Put a list together of the non-critical things that you have going on that may not fall underneath those fixed fee services of server care, desktop care. Some weeks that might be, or some months that might be an hour or 2, some months it might be 3 or 4. If it's anything over budget from that, we're going to let Kaylin know in advance that, hey, you guys have ordered 10 new computers, or you've ordered a new server, or something major that needs approval. These are just maintenance hours that are included. Kind of gets you guys into our system. We also have a normal business hours help desk associated with that, where we currently have 1 full-time technician there. We're looking to hire a 2nd technician for that by the beginning of the year. That normal business hours use cases, you're not always having to funnel things through Ryan. We have a full support desk for her to be able to contact.
Okay. Trina?
So if we went with the option 3, the least expensive, we would still have the choice to call you in for 140 an hour?
Yep, it would just be a lot more reactionary, so there wouldn't be any type of guarantee on the day that we were gonna be there for it. So, yeah, there really is no difference between option 1 and option 3 other than a committed day, a little bit more organized for you guys, as well as us. Correct?
Would it be beneficial to be with a more organized plan, or are we more likely to have random mild emergencies that we don't expect and wouldn't want to wait for our specified
Sure.
day?
One of the main things that Keegan wrapped into option 1 is there are no trip charges. With option 1, we've bundled that in. One, it's easier for you guys, so if there are non-emergency type items, we're not gonna be making multiple trips out. We're not gonna be coming each month. If it's something critical, we can obviously remote in and support it. The first thing that we're gonna do with that desktop care and with that elite server care, we have a network operations center in Pennsylvania with a couple hundred engineers in there that are troubleshooting 24/7. So if something happens off hours, that's who we're gonna defer to. They're gonna have, complete access to the systems. They're a secure company. They're in compliance. We use them with a lot of different municipalities. If they're unable to do it and it's something that requires a technician to be on site here, that's what you're gonna see those 4 hours for. So sometimes you might not use 4 hours for user support. If there's an emergency that happens, that 4 hours can be directed towards that as well. It's kind of just a nice budgetary number per month that you may need.
Thank you.
Any other, Dave, go ahead.
Does this cover the entire city?
Yes.
Does this cover the utility as well? The sewer utility, wastewater treatment plant?
Yes.
So, Kalen, the quote, or the answer you gave on the budget, was that just for the general fund? Or did that also include the utility? Because the utility would need to pay their share as well. And that could make up the difference.
The way that we do our ticketing system and in most municipalities, we are able to break it down by department. So if we're able to look at those 4 hours, or let's say those, 48 hours a year you guys typically use, and 20 goes to DPW, another 25 goes to admin, another 15 goes to PD, we can actually track those as subtypes. So when somebody gets an invoice for it, they can all be tracked separately based on department.
So I think we'd want to do that, monitor that, and report maybe quarterly to you. And when you move this on to the council for action, we can get more detail on what that budget impact would be with the utility and the general fund.
Okay. Ed?
Kalen, do you have a recommendation from your experience with them as to which option you would recommend?
My recommendation to start would definitely be option 1.
Okay.
For the things that we've run into with all of the transition, if we looked at that again after 4 more months, but right now I think that is our best option to, and then also the idea of being able to track it individually to the departments. That'll be wonderful for another budget year, because right now everything runs out of the same budget, basically out of City Hall.
In addition,
So-
I understand, retiring at some point, and your replacement, you think your replacement would have a greater comfort level with option 1 and the people coming on site?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yes, thank you.
And then, as far as the commitment level goes, I mean, fiscally, we should probably do a 2-year commitment. It makes sense to do it that way. It's cheaper.
That would be my recommendation at this point in time. We have our new equipment in. We've got a schematic I could share with everybody here as well. But I think protecting what we have going forward until we figure out a plan for the city in this position, option 1 is the way to go. And the 2-year.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Trina?
Comment, I guess, would be that it just, I haven't looked at this in a lot of
I was
detail.
going to go next, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I guess I'm just wondering, do we want to commit to 2 years? This is a new program. In 6 months, everything might be fairly handled. I'm just not sure. But I know, for the amount per month, per year, that does make sense.
My thought is, this is, I don't really know if you ever have IT handled. I mean, it's ever changing. There's threats every day. There's new programs, new changes to the existing programs, et cetera. I would, I think, so in my opinion, I think OnTech has done a great job, and I'm very pleased with them, and I don't see another option. I just don't, I fear option 3 is going to cost us more in the long run, because one bad thing happens, they're out here for 8 hours and once in 10 hours, or a 2-week project. I mean, something terrible happens, I would be worried that over the course of 2 years, it's going to cost us more money. But, Dave, you had another question or comment? You're good? Okay. Mayor Tome?
I think, yeah, once we get used to this and start breaking this down by department, I think is going to be very beneficial for us. I think they've covered a lot of ground for us in a very short period of time just with these new servers, but when I see the language that's being used in here, we don't have someone on staff that's our IT person. We're relying on contracted services for this, and I think this hits all the marks. I think going in with at least a 2-year agreement, there's still probably things that maybe we haven't dealt with policy-wise in the city as far as security and all those other things.
Yeah.
And this gives us some time to address those individually and deal with them over the next couple of years after finally getting the servers and the backups and the separation between PD and the city and all those other things done in a fairly short amount of time. So I'm comfortable with number 1 and the 2-year commitment as well.
I do like Dave's suggestion that we could cover a part of the cost through the sewer utility.
Yep.
It's the same network, so.
Yeah, I think even just by department tracking the amount of time helps us identify, there may be departments that aren't as reliant on servers or technology, where others are. Obviously the police department, there's records retention and other things over there, but there's, that's separate from the city itself. Now there's a firewall between the two, but I think learning more about that in the first year, I think will be beneficial to try to break down the cost department to department. And I don't know if water and light is separate from
They're
this?
separate from
They're
this.
separate from
Yeah.
this, okay.
And the other way I look at it, for the $700 a month, for an employee's time, for my time, and the time that what we've spent over the last year in a lot of these, and the monitoring that hasn't been there, that's where I guess I'm more in favor of have the monitoring, have this on-site care package kind of all wrapped into one, and we can always pull back when they see we aren't using it. We can come back and revisit it. So
I agree. I think if there's devices or accounts that are kind of left out there in staff, if we have to have an internal staff person constantly dealing with that stuff, we don't need that anymore. We have a contracted service that's identifying those accounts for us immediately, which I think is a great benefit.
and
when it
helping
comes
us
to
push out
security.
the education piece, that's where I think is a lot very important here as well,
I
to
agree.
wrap that into it. So
Go ahead, Trina.
I guess I'm coming into agreement that the all-inclusive is probably the safest route. It's pricey, but, yeah, I agree, Andy. It could get out of hand otherwise,
You
just
never know.
randomly.
Yeah, and one other thing we're probably not considering, because it's not in front of us, is how much were we paying for each, for our last person, we were paying, per visit. Those numbers aren't in front of us to compare, but I think you'll find it to be fairly close.
he was definitely in this range per hour and everything else, but nowhere near the monitoring piece that we will move forward, and the education piece that we'll get going forward here.
In this day and age,
So,
it's
yeah,
very important
yep.
to, especially as a city, to have everything locked down tight.
And if we
security.
go back to our 2 initial proposals, we were looking at one which was close to 125,000 versus the 40-some thousand that we've paid to date here. And then also they were, at least 1,000 more a month to even begin to look at a maintenance contract. So I feel the experience and the cost of what we're getting here is very, very competitive.
And had you said we had 17,000 in the budget?
I believe it's 17.5, and I meant to ask him that real quick
Okay.
before I came through
So
tonight.
if we went with number one, it would still be under 20,000?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. So there were 3 items on the list here. We had the spreadsheet we've looked at with the 3 maintenance options. Everyone seems to be in agreement, option 1. And then we looked at and then number 2 is network discovery and maintenance option detail. That's a part of what we just chose. And then number 3, web root security awareness training.
Yep.
Did somebody want to speak about that, or is that just a?
Yeah.
So
It's not included in option 1. This is independent.
yeah, this is independent. This would be a little bit more forward thinking. Besides the monitoring, one of the things that this service is doing is patching, updating, making sure the network is clean on a regular basis. With entities that are HIPAA compliant or SOX compliant, or sometimes in police departments you might have to meet FIPS or CGIS, or in healthcare I think I mentioned that there's HIPAA as well. We also have a product called Fortify. At the very last page 13 of that, there is no compliance requirements yet for municipalities to have to have regular dark web security threat monitoring, to have a higher level of antivirus going on yet, but this is something that we see coming down towards municipalities as you guys have more taxpayer information. The need for more security becomes apparent. So it's something that we're recommending to all municipalities to start thinking about. Again, it's nothing that is required at this stage. I kind of would defer to Ryan here, I guess, from a security perspective. Anything you've seen over the last few weeks or months working with them from an IT perspective that would make you feel this product would be necessary sooner rather than the compliant things they're doing?
Well, I mean, all it takes is one click. This Fortify security solution, the last portion is proactive monitoring for ransomware attacks. They provide, I think it's $1 million guarantee.
Yep.
If ransomware successfully gets on your system, takes over, and anything needs to be done to recover it, our time, they cover all that up to $1 million.
That is
So-
capped to 1,000 per endpoint, so you guys would have about 44,000. I've never seen a ransomware higher than maybe 10 or 15,000, but that is one of the nice features that I definitely didn't bring up, is the ransomware insurance that comes along with that.
But this is basically monitoring every process on the machine, and it's part of the NOC that Mark was talking about, where there's a field of engineers in Pennsylvania. They see odd activity or file encryption starting on a machine. They instantly shut it down, call us, let us know what's going on, and then get to the root cause of what's happening and basically block it before it happens. Sometimes we see ransomware with WebRoot or Trend Micro, the antivirus programs, where it runs for an hour in encrypting files on the network before the virus software sees it, and you're already in a world of hurt at that point.
Okay. Do any of our protections now, or any of our programs now have like block dangerous websites from employees to visit?
So we, on the Sonic Wall Firewall, we are running the content filtering service. It's blocking all of the common things that it blocks, pornography, hate speech, that sort of thing. I have yet to go over the exact list with Kalen, but we're blocking all the common bad things.
Okay, appreciate that. So it looks like that's a reoccurring monthly total of $352. Is
correct.
Mike?
I'm way out of my element when I'm talking about IT security, but
Okay, that's
so is this Fortify, is this a program that's run on the servers, or is it on every device that's within the network, I guess?
It would be on every device in the network.
Is it invasive? I mean, I know I've had to run, years ago, something on a computer, and it just seemed like everything was running on fudge or molasses, I guess, because it's filtering things.
Yeah, and actually, they're getting a lot better nowadays. You're running Trend Micro for antivirus on the desktops currently.
Okay.
The WebRoot program is 10% of what Trend is on system resources. It's virtually nothing.
Good.
The Fortify for security is a little more, but it's not like you saw in the old days with antivirus programs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. More questions for OnTech? Your thoughts on the endpoint security? So $352 a month. I mean, that's also going to need to be considered in in the budgeting process. So we'll have to figure that out as well with Kaylin and Kim. Mike?
That price of $352 per month, is that based upon the number of users, I guess, that we have here?
If you look at that price, it's 44, so we're looking at the 4 servers that you guys have, as well as the estimated 40 endpoints across the PD and the administration and wastewater.
Okay.
DPW.
Okay.
Yep, so that's per machine.
Per machine, correct.
Now, does this, again, I'm kind of like Mike here with my knowledge of IT, but I do know that staff have phones, and they also can access email through phones and stuff like that. Is there any threat there, or is this going to be something that would cover that kind of that thing too, or?
This would not cover phones or mobile devices. Currently, no one's using any mobile devices to access anything on the network internally, just email that's accessed through Office 365.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Any other questions? We good moving option 1 forward with the also the Fortify for endpoint security as well? Okay. Am I missing anything else there, Kaylin, or is that everything? Okay.
That's everything.
Okay. Don't see any opposition to that, so we'll move that forward for approval at our next regular meeting. Thanks, guys, for coming in.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Next up, number 9, request from Kestrel Ridge to connect to city stormwater. Jason Letha's here, and we also have Johnny Blaska from Kestrel Ridge. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, good evening. So this item came before us with a request from Kestrel Ridge to meet with staff. Since they've owned the property down there, they've been looking at making some significant improvements to aid in the drainage around the golf course. The reason I think they came to the city was obviously it impacts a lot of properties that surround the city, and so they wanted to kind of run a few things by us. They have kind of a long-term plan to do some future improvements. The improvement they're inquiring about right now is notably on the north end of the course up by William Street. So it's in that area. There's a pond up there. Those of you who play golf, it's kind of the 5th, 6th hole up in that area. There's a lot of water that kind of stands along those yards up there. That pond is always very flooded in that particular area and has really no outlet. It's just a low point all the water drains into. So currently the city has 2 storm sewers in that area. One drains the William Street that was put in 2009. I was here when that was designed and installed, and it kind of runs down the edge of the golf course and out to River Road, ultimately the river. There's also another storm sewer that kind of cuts diagonal through the golf course. It does have easements in place to be there, but it drains water off Waterloo Street and across the golf course to the river. And so what they came to staff and asked for, and came to the DT meeting and asked for, was some consideration to put a control structure in their pond to regulate the outflow, but to have it go somewhere. And then that would ultimately hook into, or they wanted to connect into, one of the city storm sewers so the water could drain out of that area. The idea is that they could lower the pond level, and keep the water that's ponding around the pond and around the yards adjacent to the golf course. They could get it away from and hopefully drain into the pond to keep those water levels down for both the golf course and for the surrounding residents. So we took a little look at some information that was provided or submitted from the golf course and the contractor they're working with. And right now, based on the information that they've provided, it looks fairly feasible that they'd be draining into the system with a fairly low amount of water, considering the overall capacity of our storm sewer. They would do the work, they would make the connection, they just need to make sure that, you know, it's okay to connect. The two things that we had asked for was to give us the information so we could understand, to make sure that we weren't adding to a problem or creating a problem that doesn't exist. And the other thing we asked for would be to have some kind of an agreement going forward if there was repairs in the future or something that needed to be done, you know, that there was an agreement that they'd be responsible for costs and things, and you know, future maintenance would be kind of laid out in some type of an agreement that could, you know, be drafted by the city and signed by the property owner. So at this point, from an engineering standpoint, we didn't have any issue with it, but we wanted to bring it here before you tonight. Representative Johnny from the golf course is here tonight to answer any questions that you may have of them, or if you have any questions for me.
Okay. Trina?
Oh, no, I guess I'm just concerned that the sewer system can realistically handle the amount of water. Just living on River Road, some of the water coming off of the golf course has been incredible in volume. And with the recent backing ups of the storm systems, I'm just wondering, do we think they can handle the extra load and the speed that
Yeah,
might be coming?
Correct, and that's what we looked at from a capacity standpoint, and that's why they have a control structure, so they can limit the flow so it's not all coming in one big rush. The other thing that they would like to do is just draw down the permanent level so it's much lower. So when it rains, we actually have storage capacity in the golf course, so it has somewhere to pond and to store. Right now, it basically just floods the course and renders their course unusable, and then it floods into the properties right away. So their idea would be to drop that existing level down to allow that to have some detention capacity, and then they could release it at a much slower rate. They were talking, I think, 1 cubic foot per second. I think those storm sewers out there, as they are probably designed to handle 12 to 15 cubic feet per second. So we're talking maybe a tenth of the volume of the flow. But they would also, it would be, if it's regulated with a control structure, that flow will occur when it's not raining as well. So theoretically, the storm sewer would be empty off of, you know, the city streets, but they would still be discharging a small flow into there as their pond lowers after the storm event's over. So again, the control structure will help hold that back and limit the volume that will actually enter the system at once. So we're pretty comfortable that with the information they provided us, that we wouldn't have an issue. We also looked at hydraulic grades to make sure that we weren't going to force water out of the ground downstream somewhere in Flood River Road or something like that. But again, the amount of water that they're providing is fairly small here because they're controlling it. So
Would that also help with some of the concerns Trina had about the water going off of the course onto the River Road properties?
They are putting in, and Johnny can maybe speak to this, they're doing a lot of drain tiling around the course right now to hopefully get a lot of that water, and rather than sitting and ponding along or running onto private property, they're trying to get it to infiltrate or drain into the pipes and get it. Part of their project that you don't see here is they're draining, they're making a direct connection to the river on the other side of their property, and they're running a large pipe up into their main pond, and they're feeding a whole bunch of drain tiles into that system. So that's all a direct connection discharge. They don't, obviously that's not running through the city system, but they're making dramatic improvements to help drain that entire area from all the way from the apartments on River Road to the Larson House to the condos, all the way up River Road properties, and then around William Street, and then obviously over on Waterloo Street. So they're going to be affecting a fairly significant amount of land that they're hoping to lower the water and get a lot of that water going where now it sits and it ponds and it floods into yards. So,
Mike?
What is the control structure?
So essentially, it'll be a box with some weirs or some boards in there where they can take out boards to allow more water out, or put boards in to hold more water back, and that allows them to control the pond elevation. It's a pre-manufactured structure. It's agrifab. Agri-drain. So it's like a little stop log structure. It's made for drain tile installations in the farming industry, but it works well in the situation. So that's kind of what they'll put in the pond, and then they will allow that to be the control structure to release the water.
Okay. But they would be regulating that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Dave?
Jason, is this costing the city anything?
No.
And who's maintaining the control structure? Who's paying for it and who's maintaining it?
The golf course.
Is that in writing?
That will be part of the agreement.
Not yet.
Not yet. We're
Okay.
proposing that would be one of the conditions, is that we have an agreement in place. And also part of the agreement that we discussed with the property owners was, in the event that there would be an impact, that the city would have the right to come back and say, you need to control the water to a certain degree, or you need to stop releasing the water during this period of time. So it'd give the city some rights to come back and say, if you're connecting to our sewer but you're causing adverse effects, the city would have the right to come back and have that, change made, or have them stop releasing water, or whatever that case may be. And so again, I think the agreement's kind of the key to all of this in my mind, but the connection, the connection and the engineering piece seem to be pretty straightforward in my mind, that I don't have a ton of concern, but we do need to have this protection in place with some type of an agreement.
Ian?
I mean, a lot of my primary concern you kind of just mentioned is making sure that the city has some sort of a control, or say something over how much water they're inputting and when they're inputting it, and not just them having it. And I mean, as long as they are maintaining everything and the city does have some sort of control, I don't want it to have to be only the city can step in and mandate the control levels, how much water that they're putting in after an adverse situation, because, I mean, then we have to define what that is, and plus how do we prove that it's coming from the golf course? Like, that's way too arguable. The city needs more of a blanket way to control it if necessary. So that would be my only concern, but that would definitely improve the entire area and flooding in the entire area, so it's a great thing to move forward with, I think.
Mark?
What's the timeline for the project? That's, I guess, if we have to draft an MOU and accept that, that's my main concern, is the timeline, if it's something you wanted to get done this fall yet. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think currently, as long as the council agrees, we get everything drafted, we're just going to stub everything in, and then we'll come back with smaller equipment and then finish the job once the agreement's in place. Whenever that happens, it could be January, it could be February, but as of right now, I think we'll just get everything lined up, and then once everyone's in agreement, we'll do the work to finish it off. So it's fairly simple.
You would be doing the excavating on site, but it wouldn't get plugged into the storm sewer until the agreement is completed.
Correct, yeah, because
That's
it
what I'm hearing.
takes a lot of very large equipment to do majority of the work, but the last 5 feet we can do with, like a skid steer sized excavator. So.
Jason, do you have concerns with that approach at all?
No, at this point, they've kind of provided, we've told them that we'd like the connection to be at a structure, so we can monitor the inflow at that structure. We obviously have the outlet control device, but we can also open a manhole and see the pipe coming in and how much water is actually getting into the sewer. And so right now, we're just working on the details about, we indicate there's a structure there, but we think it might be buried, so we have to find that. But even if there isn't a structure, they indicated that they would actually create or set a new structure there to make the tie-in point. So there's some devil in the details yet that we have to work through from our standpoint. But again, I think the concept here is the connection, the flow, the improvements, the agreement, and some of those things. So again, if you're comfortable moving this forward, I think if they're going to be putting in other drain tile anyways, regardless if they connect into this, so they're going to be doing some work there. So I think the idea that he said was they would just stub out a pipe, and then, you know, if everything goes forward and everything's agreed upon, again, I think that connection is relatively simple, like he had mentioned.
Okay. And if you do put it into a structure, can you put flow monitors in there if you wanted to kind of find the impact once it's plugged
Yeah,
into it? Okay.
absolutely. We could monitor at some point in the future if we wanted to know exactly the volume or if there was an issue that was occurring and, you know, we had to kind of dial in on that, then we'd have access to it and we could put a meter in there and we could measure that. So
We put that language in the MOU as well,
Yeah,
just
we
so
could.
we're aware of what impact there is, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm in favor of getting language together for an MOU and marching forward.
Ed?
Just one question, and maybe I'm way off base. Is there any potential phosphorus impact to the city? Because I would imagine they're using some phosphorus on the course, and is it measured through our pipe?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, the city is not measuring phosphorus in terms of stormwater release. You're only measuring in terms of the sanitary sewer permit. Now, as Columbus grows and years down the road, you may become what they call an MS4 permitted community, which then you will have a stormwater permit in place, which will have phosphorus regulations in place. So at that point, you know, they don't measure it per structure, per line. They measure it kind of as a total load across the entire city. And so what we'd have to do is we'd have to look at, the course would probably be factored into that to start with because it's in the city. And so we'd have to kind of look at that. But again, the fact that they have several of these ponds on course that we can, and they are treating or capturing the water and holding it, that is helping with the phosphorus release anyways. So I think that's a bigger question, but that's a valid question, exactly. So, yep.
Okay. So, looks like we can move this forward to the December 17th meeting to review the MOU. That'd be the committee of the whole, or are you looking to move that to the regular meeting?
That was my question for you.
Oh, that was my question for Jason.
Well, in light of what Jason just said, the devil is still in the details. It would seem to me, seeing that I haven't put two words together yet, it would seem to me that back to the community of the whole meeting on the 17th would be appropriate.
That was kind of where I was going. And I know Mayor Tone was asking about timelines, so theoretically that would, if that would move forward on the 12-17 meeting to the January meeting and for approval the first meeting in January. Is that going to be a problem at all?
I mean, if that's what's got to be done, it shouldn't be anything crazy. I think just have to pump out the pipe, and I mean, these guys are used to getting really wet, so I've been watching them work. I feel bad for them, but they just keep going, so
Okay.
It shouldn't be an issue. So I can double check with Kartechner, but I'm sure we'll make it work.
All right. I was going to say, how long would it take you to draft something? If we have a special meeting next Tuesday, we could take a first whack at it then, potentially, to then get it on the 17th, if it was a matter of urgency, and if you had the time. If not, apparently January could work.
My hope is to have something at least fleshed out for our development team meeting, which is Thursday. So you can have something in your hands by the 9th, or the 9th, did you say? 10th? Yeah, you can have something in your hands by then if that's what you want. Okay.
Yeah, that would speed up.
I'll
the
make it
timeline.
happen.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this one for Jason or Johnny? Okay. Well, Johnny, I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much.
I think everyone's going to be very happy with it.
All right. All right. So Jason's still standing there. Assume he's going to talk about number 10, request from Drexel for dedication of pond and extension of terms of development agreement.
Okay, so I'll kind of take a crack at this. I might need Paul to chime in. So Drexel finished up their project some time ago. We've had some outstanding items with their site that were part of the approved plan and their approved agreement that they needed to take care of. they've been operational for some time, and we had a meeting earlier this fall before Patrick left because they have still had a couple outstanding items. You know, it's always hard with these projects when there's a few minor things at the end when everybody feels they're kind of wrapped up and functioning. A couple of things here that were major outstanding in my mind, or well, minor major, I call them major, they think they're minor, were one of the things that they had not done was one of the requirements the council had previously was they had to pave their entire site, their whole yard around all their buildings. That had came before the council previously, and they had requested a waiver. Your ordinance requires that all sites are paved, parking lots are paved, and the council decided they weren't going to allow that waiver to exist. They wanted the site paved. Well, they paved probably 60-70% of the site around their buildings, but they have a gravel area on the east side that they didn't finish. And we had kind of asked them earlier this year, and they were going to have a contractor come in and do it, and then it hadn't occurred. So when we kind of reached back out to them and indicated that they still needed to finish that, the indication was that they had future plans to build another building, and they really didn't want to pave the lot because they wanted an extension. And so we got into some discussion with that. The other item that was still outstanding was the acceptance of the pond. So they built their site pond there. That pond also does serve as a retention area for our stormwater coming off of the road that we built, Hall Road extension. And they were going to dedicate that over to the city, but they had some great issues with the pond when we asked to survey it to make sure it was built per the plan. So they had to go back and make some improvements or changes and then resurvey it. And that took quite some time. And so at this point, we are looking to dedicate the pond, but we did ask that they just kind of clean it up. It needs to be mowed, and there's a couple other things out there. We just wanted to check to make sure there's no erosion. But now with the weather that came and it's late in the season, they're asking for an extension on that. So rather than, you know, they kind of admitted, we know we're on the hook for that. We know we didn't get it done, but we'd like an extension on the pond so we can get it mowed when the weather is better. And we also want an extension on the paving. Neither one of these two issues in my mind, you know, prevent issues from happening or the site from performing. But yet they're still on the list, and they were part of the original agreement. So I think there's a letter that's in your packet that was written by their attorney just kind of outlining that request. And so we said, you know, if you're going to make the request, you know, go ahead. I mean, it's not the staff's decision. We want to bring it here and make sure that if this is acceptable, you know, we can certainly try and answer questions on the staff side of it. Or, you know, I don't think there's anybody here from Drexel to answer any questions, but that's kind of where this is sitting. So I don't know if you had any questions, or Paul, did I sum it up?
I think you summed it up perfectly.
So the resolution that's in here, 27-19, is that extending it to June?
No. The resolution that is in your packet for your review is to accept the pond and the pipe. And when Jason said that the pond, or that the area around the pond hasn't been mowed, I guess I'm wondering if that's premature at this point in time, or if you're okay with, I mean, the pond is functioning properly.
It's our indication the pond is fine, is functioning. We just want it mowed up so it's clean, to kind of have a fresh start for Public Works, rather than have them kind of have a lot of overgrowth and stuff to deal with as soon as we accept the pond. I kind of feel like it should be maintained at least to some level before we take it over. So this was our request, to mow it and cut the vegetation down. The pond itself is functioning the way it's designed, and they've made the improvements or changes. So I felt like we could accept the pond with kind of the guarantee that they would mow it before, you know, kind of in the spring or something, and then that would kind of be their last time they would do that.
Right. So there's actually two completely separate items before you. One is the acceptance of the pond and the pipe, and the second item is the extensions that Jason has been mentioning regarding the paving and the cleanup. Those were the two issues.
Mayor Tom?
On the pond issue, in their letter under item number 9, They acknowledged they had a very wet summer. Winter came early this year, and our team was not able to get the landscaping done in time for the plantings to survive the deep freeze. I don't know where that all falls in the mix, but they're looking for an extension to do the plantings yet next year as well.
They have some plantings on their site, some vegetation around their parking lot that they were required as part of their approved landscaping plan. So that's the extension on the landscaping. I had forgot about that, I'm sorry. That was the third thing here. They were asking for an extension on that. We reminded them they were missing some trees and some other plantings around their site, and they said, yeah, I think they were hoping nobody would notice, but.
I'm just wondering if can we work that into the resolution, that extension? I mean, if we're gonna accept the pond and it's working, that's great, but if they haven't completed the landscaping that was in the developer's agreement, I'd wanna see that completed.
And the landscaping that wasn't completed isn't associated with the pond, it's associated with around their perimeter of their site. So again,
okay.
the pond is good except for the cutting, the mowing.
Yeah, we just need it to be mowed once.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we kind of thought if they could mow, we'd accept the pond, they can mow it one time for us in the spring, and then the landscaping and the paving, those were two things associated directly with the site.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So they still need to submit erosion control corrections to the pond area?
What was your question, Ian?
They still need to do some erosion control measures and corrections near the pond and
Well,
the washout?
Yeah, once they mow it, I mean, we have to determine if there's any, surface erosion or just, any channelization. I have no reason to believe there is, but I don't want to say there's not. So, I think that's just part of the mowing and the maintenance before they turn it over to us, in my mind, is kind of one last clean it up. If there's any minor, the erosion would be minor if any, but if there is, I want certainly to have them correct that as well.
And the survey has not been, the additional survey hasn't been completed?
It has, yes. It has, and I've verified that it is, the issues have been corrected, so.
Okay, so that's.
Go ahead.
Do we give up leverage if we approve the pond now and then they don't mow in the spring or something? Are you confident that they'll work with us and this isn't going to be an issue, either you or Paul?
I'm confident. I mean, we've met with them a couple times and have conversation, and I mean, they've told us they're committed to doing it. They're a business member of the community. They understand that the city has worked with them to, help them out and establish this. I think it's just something that, to be frankly honest with you, I think it just got lost in everybody's to-do list. And, when we brought it up, they were happy to meet with us and say, yep, let's address this. And we'd like to ask for an extension and get this on the council, so that's why we're here tonight.
So then I'm fine with moving forward with accepting the pond and granting the two extension requests, is my position.
And is council good with giving them 4 years to pave?
For me, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the pond, I guess, as long as they've got the extension to complete the landscaping required, that the punch list items don't go away. I really don't know what the hurry is, I guess. I mean, it's gonna be winter. It is kind of winter, and it's a stormwater pond, and we're dedicating that incomplete in the winter. I think we can cover that in the resolution, though. I'm fine with that as well, the way that's been outlined. The paving is a different story. I think that waiting till 2024, not revisiting it somewhere between here and there would maybe a better approach. They kind of have their plans for future development, it looks like, but can they outline those areas or solidify those plans and pave around it? I don't know. But to me, I think 4 years at the first request for an extension is a bit much. That's just my first take anyway.
Well, and then what happens in 4 years when it's still not done? Are they going to come in for another extension? I tend to agree with you. I was a little concerned about a 4-year extension on that. I'd be willing to go 2 years, or at least something in the next 2 years to revisit it. That's where I'm at on that one. I agree with Mike on the. I don't really know if we need to do this resolution now on the pond, but, we can, if, you know, if staff or council thinks that that's the way we should go, then we can. It just, again, feels a little early. Trina?
I don't know, I guess I'd be fine just giving an extension on both the pond and the landscaping for sure. I don't really see any rush for either of those issues or quite how they would fix either before, you know, next spring or early summer comes. For the gravel, I'm really on the fence for the 5 years. I don't want to be wasteful and have them to pave when they know it's going to be torn up. But at the same time, I just want to make sure we're mitigating any dust that's getting thrown up in the area. That's my only concern.
Yeah, that was definitely the concern when we discussed that originally and denied that waiver. So I agree with you there. Ian?
Yeah, I don't know if there's really any reason to accept the pond right now. I don't really understand why we would. Like, there's just no point in it. Like, it doesn't do anyone any benefit. I think once they get everything taken care of for it, then we should accept it. And there's just no reason to accept it ahead of time, in my opinion. As far as the gravel goes, I'm in line with the mayor. I think if they could show us some sort of plans of what their future development is and kind of at least work toward paving areas they know that they're not going to be developing and things, show us some sort of progression, that would be different than just giving them a blanket extension.
Is there a difference for the stormwater accepting it now?
There isn't, other than the mowing, it's ready. So, I mean, but we can certainly wait. I mean, there's no difference if you accept it today or you accept it in the spring, so.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. What's the will of the council?
I guess my thought is I'd like to accept the pond now, work with them, and grant the extension on item 9 till July 1 of 2020. And I can see the wisdom of granting a 2-year extension to September of 2022 on item number 3. And, you know, maybe we revisit it then when if they have not completed it by then and still have further plans. But I can see the wisdom of granting a shorter extension than what they're requesting off the jump.
Thanks, Ed. Anyone else? Mike?
I don't like the 2-year. I think that since this is a developer's agreement, it is pretty much should be constantly monitored. I think an annual review at the very least to force the conversation to say, have you developed a site plan for the next phase of your development? That it happens at least once a year. I think waiting for 2 years, at least if it's a 15-minute conversation, we don't have it ready yet, we'll kind of force them to start identifying what those other buildings are going to be. Otherwise, I think if we stretch it out to 2 years, you know, there's always changing faces up here. Things can be kind of forgotten about. So I think since it's tied to a developer's agreement, there should be at least an annual monitoring of where it is. We don't want this to be used as an excuse where we planned on doing that, and then 5 years later or 4 years later, after we've granted a 4-year extension, they decided, oh well, we're not doing anything, and we haven't forced them to pave their site. So I think having an annual review, I'm fine with, just to monitor it.
Okay. I threw out 2-year as just a number I didn't really know.
I'm just saying it annually to
Yeah,
let the current council or whoever's up here know that that's still an issue that can't be forgotten about, because it was part of an agreement that the city, you know, agreed to. So that's my only concern there.
I get behind that. All right, anyone else?
I can deal with the pond too if you want to bring it forward with those conditions. Yeah, you know, either way, I think as long as the conditions and the extension are in there, I'm fine with that too.
Anybody else have a problem with that? We just move that forward as with accepting the pond with conditions, and item 9 with the landscaping till July of 2020, and item 3 to be reviewed annually. Is that good for everybody? Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So for the resolution, the condition that the pond that the area be mowed before, as condition of condition of acceptance, was there other conditions? I just caught that one.
Nope, I don't think
They'll have to, I mean, he mentioned that they don't think that there's any problems with erosion, but it should be conditioned that it,
Erosion.
as such.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, everybody good on item 10? Okay. Next up, number 11, functional classification update for Columbus urban area. Looks like Matt's making his way up to the podium. He's going to introduce this to us.
Yep. So Columbus population's right at 5,000. By the definition of the census, that makes us an urban area. And our urban area also includes Fall River. So the Columbus Fall River urban area, one of the requirements of being an urban area for the WSDOT is they partner with Federal Highway Administration, and they create functional classification maps throughout the state. And they have to update these every 10 years. So the Southwest region contacted us actually a few months ago to approve or to basically agree with their map. We've reviewed it at the staff level, and we do not see any issue with it. They gave us two options. They gave us basically a form letter to send off, a letter of concurrence. And I see the map did not print because they sent a 24 by 36. I'm sorry, I just saw it from Ed's because mine did the same thing. So it is a 24 by 36, and it didn't print a fit, unfortunately, the page. And I can send this out to the group, I guess, if needed. But basically, there's varying levels of classification, whether it's a major arterial, minor arterial, collector, or a local street. So staff's reviewed it. They don't see any issue with their functional classification. We've agreed with their findings, and essentially what we need to do is send a letter of concurrence off to WSDOT so they can go through their approval process. So I put the draft letter of concurrence in there. I did note in there that this is only for Columbus. I told Tom at WSDOT, I'm like, you need to reach out to the village of Fall River to have them approve the functional classification for their streets. That's really all I have on this. It's pretty, I guess, straightforward to me. And we can bring this to the next meeting, and I can have a final copy for you to sign. Or I don't even know if this actually needs a council approval, since this is essentially agreeing with, I guess I'm more asking Paul in this case, since we're just agreeing with their findings. Paul?
As long as you brought it this far.
There's no harm in waiting.
It would seem like a good idea to have the mayor authorized to send the letter that you're requesting.
Okay.
That's fine. That would make good sense to me.
Thank you.
So along with the map that didn't print properly, can you also, on the back side, there was information that was cut off? I would like to see what that was too.
That was, okay. Oh, yeah. Huh. Yeah, no, I printed, yeah. I guess, yeah, I will duly noted.
Paul, were you saying authorizing the mayor to do that? Would that be at the regular council meeting, or, okay, so
Yeah,
bring it
so-
forward? Okay,
We'll go forward on the 17th.
okay, okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this? Okay, we'll move that forward, and Matt will send us a cleaner version of the map and the information on the other page that lists the streets. All right. Actually, Zach, I'm gonna skip you for a minute, if that's okay. We have HLPC here for 2 items. Right, okay. All right. So I'm gonna, if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna skip to number 13 and 14. Number 13, request from CHLPC for pavilion exterior painting project. Carolyn and Fredericks and John Salzwedel are here from the CHLPC to tell us about it.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Tome. In your packets, which one is exterior painting will be first. If you saw the materials in your council packets, we tried to get everything all taken care of before we even got here. So the exterior painting, we did fill out the State Historical Preservation Office, we call it the SHPO form. They sent it back and basically said that the exterior painting would fall under just a simple maintenance. So we got that all taken care of. Certificate of appropriateness, that one we need in lieu of Patrick being gone. Maybe we can have either Dave or Mayor Tome sign it, who would ever be comfortable with signing it on behalf of the city. We did have 4 or 5 companies that were actually originally interested in the project itself. We're all excited about it. We got our specifications all together, sent those out to everybody that was interested. 3 bids were returned for the exterior painting projects. We checked out referrals, all that kind of stuff, met with some of the contractors. CHLPC voted to go with Roberts Brothers Painting out of Randolph. They are very excited to do this project. We do have a commitment from Angie Shesky or the Merle Gunther Foundation to be paying for this project. We got a commitment from them. This project is slated for summer of 2020. We're actually doing the window restoration, or hoping to do the window restoration project first, and maybe one other project ahead of time, and then hopefully follow up with the icing on the cake as the exterior painting project then in summer of 2020. So we'll have the signed donation form from Angie, and from the Merle Gunther Foundation, all of that kind of stuff, with council approval. We'll get all those details wrapped up. But in the packet, there was a email I included from Angie Shesky and the Merle Gunther Foundation, for committing to this project. So John and I are here in case you have any questions on, we'll start with the exterior painting project. See if there are any questions we can answer.
Mayor?
I haven't gone through every detail of all the estimates or proposals, but are there any concerns with lead in the paint on the outside of the pavilion?
None of the contractors seem to have any concerns with that.
Okay. Has there been any testing done, or is it required? I know that they're using water blast. Well, some of these are talking about pressure washing or whatever, but I didn't know if there was any concern about containing that or needed to be done.
I don't know, but we can look into that.
I don't know how
question.
deep you want to dig into it, because it could obviously add expenses, but it's a large amount of paint in an area, or if it's just, contained. But that would be my main question.
Okay.
Any other questions on the painting project? Ian?
That was my primary concern too. I was actually just trying to look up because I had a client that had their home done with a company out of Randolph that did the facade of their home, and it was an older house that had to be scraped and everything, and I can't remember if it was the same company or not, but all they did was water blast, and they didn't scrape properly, and it looked absolutely awful, and there was paint chips everywhere, like on the premises, and they might not be concerned with lead, but a building of that age is, unless every ounce of paint has been removed, there's almost certainly going to be lead somewhere in that paint that's being removed. So that's definitely my only real concern is how well they're going to clean off that paint and how well they're going to clean up that paint. I don't see, at least looking through this, I didn't see anything about the cleanup of the paint. I see some water blasting and hand scraping as needed, it says, but I didn't see anything about the cleanup of all their paint.
Okay, we'll follow up with them on that. All these companies that we're working with, are very familiar. It's a public building, municipal building.
It's an old building. They know that.
Yeah, and also the rental schedule, you know, everybody's gonna have to be working around, you know, the busy rental schedule, you know, they basically have Monday through Thursday, and then, you know, they'll be taking all their lifts and their equipment and stuff, you know, completely off the premises for rentals, so.
Trina, go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah, my question was just on the water blasting and hand scrape as needed. Are we pretty sure that they will be quite responsible and truly scrape all of the needed chips off? It's so much work.
Yeah, they're quite familiar with the project. You know, they looked it all over. They're actually doing some, you know, minor repair work and stuff like that too. Any caulking, any, you know, pieces of wood or siding, you know, that are rotted out that they know need replacement, that type of thing. You know, they're using a good primer on the building, especially on the south side of the building, that Park Avenue side that gets that afternoon sun. Right, yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
No, I would just add that the bid we got from Robert's brother, this seems to be within their scope of work, their expertise. So we felt the most comfortable going with them on this project. Again, this would be a project that would be paid for through the Merle Gunther Foundation and not city tax dollars. So sounds like a good one.
Yeah, the only concern I have was just with the scraping, that there's some type of language in here that says that, you know, they will be responsible for cleaning up the site.
Mhm.
I didn't really see that. It could be pretty standard, but I don't see that. So
We can request to have that.
I was going to say, you know, we can follow up with them and get, you know, something in writing, some kind of agreement on, you know, what the cleanup, I mean, more specifically in writing, what their cleanup, you know, right? Our definitions might be different, so we better communicate it on what our expectations are.
Okay. Any more questions on the painting project? All right. Go ahead with number 14, the request for the pavilion window restoration project.
Sure. Okay, the window restoration project is another project we're pretty excited about. Also, we have a commitment from the Merle Gunther Foundation to see this through to fruition. If you see in your packet of materials, we have the state-approved SHPO form. That's from the State Historic Preservation Office. They noted that it was a great project. In fact, they probably noted that because they were on the short list of recommended contractors. And after researching plenty, they're the ones that we decided and felt most comfortable going with. The references are great. They do a lot of great historic restoration work, predominantly in the Milwaukee Shorewood area. But they are branching out, and they're all pretty gassed to work on this project. We have an approved certificate of appropriateness. Let's see, the signed donation form and commitment of the project, like I said. The contractor's name is Community Building and Restoration. Our commission met with Eric, one of the owners of the company, to go over the process, and it was a really eventful meeting. He walked us through all of the process, including lead abatement protocol that they follow. I don't know, you can refer to your packet if you have other questions about the scope of their work. I think it's all pretty self-explanatory. But they're, like I said, really excited about this project, and they are also aware of the rentals that go on throughout the season. We'd like to get them going on this January 1st, our slow season in the pavilion, and they feel that they could wrap it up in time for any spring, summer exterior painting.
Quick question for you, John.
Sure.
Number one, there are some windows that are covered up that now will be uncovered. Is that correct?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially uncovered.
Yeah,
Okay. And then there's a rendering in here. Is that an old rendering from the past, or
I,
is this
yeah,
what
I
the-
think that was an old postcard, if I'm not mistaken, Carolyn.
Yeah, the one that we included with the information for the packet, this is an old postcard, but this is also the Park Avenue side of the building, the south side of the building, and it did have the banks of the three windows together. That it's now just two out of the three are boarded up. And so we hired a contractor, HLPC did, to do a little investigation work and to see if those openings were still there. This was how the building was originally built. And, you know, it matches the opposite side that faces the park. So the openings are still there, which the restoration company really was excited to see. You know, that, so we would like, part of our project is, and part of that bid is to bring back those banks, you know, how the
banks of three.
Banks of three up on the, especially in the ballroom. There've been enough, you know, some of the changes and the walk-in cooler added. You know, we're not going to be able to do that fully to the original windows of the building. There are just too many other things that have been added downstairs. But our main concern would be upstairs in the ballroom. So that's why that picture was included there.
And are they going to do the windows up top here too?
I'm not sure that they're going to be putting glass in there, but what they'll be doing is fixing, you know, making sure that, you know, those openings, what they may be doing is putting more of a, what did he call it, kind of a,
I forget the technical.
You know, but it's almost a black glass in there type of thing. It, you know, it doesn't
The
have
appearance of per se.
Looks like a window, but you know, if you're up there in the attic, you probably aren't going to be able to look at it.
And there, it'll basically be sealed shut. I mean, it's not ones that they're going to be functional and opening or anything, but that is part of the project as well.
Mike?
So it looks like they estimating about 6 hours at $90 an hour to do the investigative work on the windows that are covered.
Yeah.
But did they include the windows in the total window count with their?
No.
So that would be in addition to
above
this
and above.
probably?
Yeah, above
Okay.
and beyond.
Do you know how many you think there are covered?
I'm gonna guess maybe 8
Okay.
on the banks without looking at it right now, but
Okay.
Of the banks of 3, we'd like to restore the aesthetic of the ballroom. You know, to have the matching mirror image on both sides of the ballroom.
Ed?
One of these contracts requires 20% upfront, the other one 40% upfront. Does the city advance that money before the Merle Gunther, or the Merle Gunther pays that upfront?
Yeah.
Okay.
They've been a fantastic entity to work with.
Which is fantastic, and I appreciate it. I just wondered about the mechanics. And then this second contract indicates 1.5% interest per month on all payments that are 5 days overdue. That seems, you're going to be able to get the money out that fast? All right, very good. That's my only concern.
Any other questions on the window restoration project? Ian?
No question, but it's awesome. I mean, they have, it's live for 39, the restoration of 39 windows plus then investigating those, and it's only, what, 50, not even $53,000?
It's remarkable.
That's amazing.
And to retain the original windows, any historic preservationist will tell you that's the way to go. I mean, you buy new vinyl windows and they last maybe 10, 15 years. And you don't have the aesthetic, the mullions, the shadow lines that you get from the old windows and the insulating properties of the wood.
And as Eric mentioned, you know, the right time to do the whole project like this and expecting it to last another 50 to 100 years. You know, that's impressive.
No, that's awesome. I'm going to have to give these guys a call. My last quote
Yeah.
for the restoration of the windows of my house was $76,000. So
Yeah,
this
do
is
check out their work.
way better.
And this is what they do. They're the
Yeah.
experts at it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a little smaller, right? Your house?
Well, no, but the amount of windows that I have to do in my house is more than this project. But
Oh, I see. Mike, you have something? Okay. Unless there's anything else, we can move those both forward to the next regular meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. We appreciate all the hard work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, number 12. Thanks, Zach, for waiting. Continued discussion on snow removal fees. Zach has provided an update in our packet from our last meeting when we discussed this originally. Zach,
All right, good evening. So, after our last discussion, I went back with the feedback that I had received and did a little homework here. One of the questions that was asked to me is what the average lot was in the city. Pretty tough to go with an average, seeing as we've got some, depending on what part of town you're in, there's some pretty different sizes. So I wanted to kind of see what our smaller lot frontages were, because I felt that would be the appropriate number to go off of for this work. And walking the older parts of town with a measuring wheel, I found the average property frontages on the smaller property frontages to be 55 to 60 feet in width. So that was one of the concerns there. After discussing further with a few of the surrounding communities, there were some concerns about how we notify rental properties if they change hands within the season. One way we could address that is when we pull it up on GIS, if there is a different owner of the property than the address listed, we would send it to the property address as well as the owner address. Just keep in mind that there is a little bit of extra time associated with that, but it's something that's pretty easy to do. As far as empty lots go, I really don't have I did not receive any good resolutions to that other than that, as far as properly notifying them the same way everyone else is notified with a tag. About the best option I could come up with there is that we could just take the same door hanger that we give everyone else and put it on a stake and put it in the snowbank. It's not the most pleasant looking thing, and it's not the cleanest thing, but if we truly want to give that notice fairly to everybody, that's the only 24-hour notice we could give. We could surely send something in the mail, but it won't be in that 24 hours. And then sending out a mailer to the residents, and we will go over that in the fiscal impact. So after going through this a little farther, I kind of felt like my rates were still pretty low that I had presented, so I went back and found that I was using old DOT numbers. So I went back and did a little bit more homework on that to make sure that if we're going to do this, we're going to have it done right for the foreseeable future. So I'd still be looking at that. That should be $100. That should be $100 in quote fee for administrative and record keeping costs. That would essentially be our documentation stage. So if council chooses to have a mailer sent out to residents, the Water and Light does have space in the January bill for this information. It would cost DPW $125 for a one-sided black and white, $250 for a one-sided color, and double those two prices for two-sided. They would need this information by the 16th, so we would have to move this forward to next week's special meeting if we do choose to do so with a notification of all residents. So after reviewing the committee, the whole conversation with Attorney Johnson, he advised that DPW needs to only charge for services rendered. If council wants to look at a fee for increasing on habitual offenders, that will need to be an ordinance change where the property owner receives a citation from PD for not keeping their sidewalks cleared. So essentially we shouldn't legally go for 150, 200, 250. We should just go for the services that we are rendering and then look at changing that ordinance to get the PD involved with fines. So my recommendation is to charge the $111.57 for the mobilization fee. That will cover admin staff time and field staff time to record the violation, as well as the cost to use the necessary equipment for 1/2 hour. Then charge a linear foot fee to cover the field staff time to clear the sidewalk. I've attached 3 options for consideration. I did add one more in there to cover this cost. So you can kind of see where I came up, where I got my numbers here for our mobilization costs, the admin staff costs there, and then the equipment costs per hour, which is some of those DOT numbers. So if you go down to my options here, set one charge for linear foot of snow removed. So in that I would envision we'd charge the $111.57 for the mobilization fee, and then it would be whatever council chooses to go with, $1 per foot or $2 per foot, whatever that number may be, to recoup the cost of the actual work completed. Option 2, set a charge for linear foot of snow removal on average property sidewalk frontage of the 60 foot, and then set another charge for linear footage of snow removed over 60 foot. That would cover us for the corner lots. Something I did not realize until I walked the streets is there's really not a lot of lots that aren't corner lots with the smaller blocks in the old part of town. So there are a lot of very large property frontages. So I would ask that you keep that in mind as we move forward with this. If you're uncomfortable charging the per linear foot, I would suggest that we set a flat removal fee to cover staff time. I'll open it up to any questions, comments, concerns.
Questions for Zach? Comments? Thoughts?
Paul, so what I heard him say is any punitive fees would require an ordinance change.
Correct.
Correct. Are we, how do we calculate an exact staff time per linear foot? I wonder, or can we get away with something that is an approximation?
Let me back up just a little bit, Ed, because your ordinance already does allow for citations to be issued for failure to shovel snow. Your ordinance already does allow for the escalation. Your general penalty is first offense and every subsequent offense after that. So that language is already in your ordinance, at least on a skeletal standard. The issue that I discussed with Zach after the last meeting is that if you're going to charge a fee for this that might get passed through and might end up ultimately on a tax bill under a special charge, then that fee has to be reasonably related to the work that's actually done. Can you calculate it to the penny? Probably not. But you have to be, that's where the conversation that went in about, well, here, we're gonna charge $117 for the first time and $157 the second time and $177 the third time, that's where you can't do that. So.
You can't do it as presently constructed. We could
You
build an
can't do that
ordinance.
as part of the fee that Zach is trying to set. You can do it as part of your ordinance for punishment, if you want to use that term. But yeah, so you have to, as you're putting this together, you have to keep the two piles separate. Zach is trying to focus on, here's the cost we need to recoup to break even. If you want to have additional penalties for miscreants who don't do it on a regular basis, that's a different conversation.
Mayor Tull?
My understanding then is that if we're trying to recapture the fee or the cost through a fee, that if we're going to go after the habitual offender, there's going to have to be a mechanism that takes it off of Zach and goes to the police department and turns into a citation.
Right, well, right, I mean, Zach's fee is gonna be X amount of dollars every single time.
Correct.
And at some point in time, he'll be irritated enough where he'll call the police department will come and do their thing and then start issuing citations.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's how it has to work together.
I agree with that too. So I think the only thing we can deal with right now is just that.
Correct.
The fee issue, if you want to get that notice out.
Correct.
And then the habitual offender is something that we continue to talk about and what policy we're going to have, I guess, to initiate that. I don't have a concern with the estimate you've come up with here. I think I'm trying to look at this as the basic starting package of your residential frontage 60 feet, and then above that, I think, is where you're going to be spending more time on a property or a corner lot, et cetera, and that's maybe where you can build in that lineal footage charge, whatever it is going to be, but I think there's got to be a base cost that starts somewhere and then escalates from that point. I don't know how we would do a flat fee unless you have a timer out there with your crew.
Correct. I just made that an option, seeing as there was some discomfort with that at the prior conversation. Really, it's like I said, there's that flat fee of the staff time spent. When the phone call comes in, you go out there, you take your pictures. That takes time. You come back, you download your pictures, you go back the next day, 24 hours later, see if it's done or not, and then, if need be, mobilize the crew to go out there and take care of it. It's just a very time-consuming process, and it's something to look at, the time we're spending on it, but it can't be forgotten that that's time we're not spending on work we're planning to do or would rather be doing.
I think if I got a fee of $111.57, I would not forget to shovel my sidewalk for the second time.
Well, mind you, that $111 is before we actually cleared it.
Yeah,
Plus the work to do it.
okay.
Ed?
What, how is this John Deere with broom and salter and snow blower baked into that 111 if you haven't cleared it?
That's part of the mobilization cost if we actually have to go out.
Right.
So then that dollar per linear foot is just covering the staff time.
Okay, so that's equipment time?
Correct. That would be
Okay,
yes.
okay, right.
You gotta load it on a trailer.
Correct,
haul
part
the
of that.
Trailer,
Okay,
unload
so,
it from the trailer.
so what do you contemplate as a number for an average, if we went with an option of a minimum charge of 60 feet, what do you envision the labor cost on top of the 111 would be approximately?
Dollar linear foot.
Okay, so option two, if I had a driveway, if I had a sidewalk that was 120 feet, that would be, and we did the same dollar, it would be $231.57 at 120 feet at $1 a foot. And if I had a driveway or a sidewalk that was 40 feet, it would be $171.57. $60 if we did a base charge.
I
of
w-
60.
I wouldn't. It would be 16 under. So if you only have 40 feet of frontage, you're only getting charged for 40 feet of frontage.
Well, that's if we went with option one. If we went with option two, it would be an initial charge of everybody pays an initial 60.
I'm sorry. That's poor wording on my end.
Okay.
That would be essentially that means you have more than 60. So the first 60 you're gonna get that. So we're just gonna call it a dollar charge.
Right.
And then after that 60, you're gonna get an additional charge, whether that is $1.50, $2.
Well, does that creep into the punitive aspect as opposed to recouping actual costs aspect?
I don't necessarily think that would be punitive because you have a reasonable and rational basis for how you're getting there.
Okay.
And again, it's the farther out on the limb you go, the more likely you are to a challenge somewhere along the way.
Okay.
But your goal is that you have to be able to sit down and you have to be able to do the math.
Right.
Basically.
So you're recommending under option two, it would, if I had a 40-foot sidewalk, I would only pay for 40 feet. But if I had 120, I would pay $60, for example, for the first 60 feet, and $1.50, for example, for the remaining 60 feet.
Correct.
Plus the 111.
Correct.
All right, then I like option two.
Okay, so along that lines, so I'm in option two camp as well. My only question is the dollar for the amount for the first 60 and the amount for the second 60. I mean, we can't continue to lose money, with this. I mean, it's the homeowner's responsibility to clear the sidewalk. If they don't do it, we're going to do it for them. We're going to charge us what it costs. You're not charging an exorbitant amount of money. You're just recouping what it cost you. So I'm fine with that. I guess the amount, the dollar or $1.50 after the second, or $2. I don't know what that answer is. So I'd be looking for a recommendation from staff on what that number is to cover costs and labor.
I would be comfortable recommending $1 for that first 60 feet, and I would go $2 at second would be my recommendation, but I would be comfortable feeling that I'm still recouping my cost or very close to at $1.50 if that is a comfortable situation or spot for council. Trina?
I just don't see any reason whatsoever to charge more after a certain length. If you're charging per foot, you're charging per foot. I don't understand the punitive nature for the large corner lots or what have you, if you're charging per foot. The only reason I would see to have any variance for under 60 or over 60 is if you're charging a flat rate, and then you've gone beyond the expected flat rate. But if it's per foot, yeah.
Mike?
I don't disagree with Trina. I I think that if we're gonna go after to be more punitive, we do it through the citation, but we keep this consistent so there's not an argument, because the mobilization costs are all there already. So once you're there, the fuel consumption by a John Deere is the same in 60 feet versus 100. You're using more resources, but you're still getting that $1 or $2 a feet or whatever it's going to be. But I think it would be kind of hard to defend that increased cost after the first 60 feet. That I guess the only thing I could think of is that you're there longer and you're not dealing with the next property, really.
That's really,
But
that's the argument.
Yeah. So I agree with Trina to a certain point right there, that if it's 300 feet or if it's 50 feet, you're still deploying that equipment there. It's the cost to run the equipment and the labor, and that you get that through your dollar a foot or whatever it's going to be. But I think if we're going after the people that are repeat offenders, we do it through the citation and not through this process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was basically just going to agree with Trina, as I think every linear foot should be charged the same. So I think just whatever that number is per foot, that's what we charge, regardless of the size, just per foot.
And to be clear, I might change my mind next year, but I think to be very clear when we communicate this to people, let's make it as easy as possible. If we start getting them a sliding scale fee on, this is how much it's going to cost you, and they have to figure this out. I think if we're going to get this message out this year and try to implement this, it's got to be as simple as possible. And I think having that one simple per square foot charge or linear foot charge is going to be a lot easier for people to understand this year, and maybe we look at it next year to say, we've made an improvement, but we still haven't bridged that gap yet, and we need to readjust, so.
Ed?
I can be talked into that. I'm fine with that. I guess I would like to see a base charge then of the average of 60 feet, and then if it's beyond that, that they measure, because I don't want them out there having to measure, oh, this was a 57 foot, so we only charge $57. I think there's some rational sense in going a minimum base charge of 60, and if it happens to be 65, I don't think they're going to measure the extra 5 feet, but I don't want them having to measure every single time that they do this. So I'd like to see some consistency, saying you get 60 feet, that's the base charge on top of the 111, and if it's much beyond that, then they do measure.
So to clarify, we would have to measure any corner lot that we did. Okay.
So it sounds like option 4 is going to be 1.5. So I'm wondering, in option 1, if you set one charge for linear foot of snow removal, that charge could be based on, couldn't you figure that charge out with the 111.57 in that?
I'm sorry, can you?
So, if we went with option 1, set one charge for linear foot, I feel like I may be wrong. You should be able to calculate, divide that 111.57 and make it, so you're basically, it's, $3.12 a linear foot. That gets that, or whatever it is. Paul, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I thought I did, and then you turned a corner.
I turned the wrong way.
Yeah, you went around you went around a corner lot.
So I can appreciate Mr. Johnson's comments regarding the 60 foot. To measure out the frontage of a sidewalk is literally just however long it takes you to walk the length of that sidewalk. So we're talking 30 seconds. So I wouldn't put that as a big burden on the staff if they're already out there. If you charge, if one house has got 57 feet, the next one's got 65. That's not, as long as we can record that properly. That's not a concern on my end. So it would just be that $1 per linear foot across the board. It would be the $111.57 if we have to come out there, and for every foot we clear, it's $1.
Yep.
Nope.
Ian?
No, if everybody's okay with that, that's just what I was going to say again, it just makes the most sense, so.
Keep it simple for the first year.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good with that.
And then would you like me to have a draft letter together for you next week?
Yes, so, yeah. Because you're gonna need, you need that by the, what date? 16th?
16th. It would be the last day that Water and Light could have that.
So if we have a special meeting next week, maybe you could get us a draft for the.
Correct. That's my, and so if, but I'm hoping we can, this will be a move forward approval so that I can have this sent out for that, have this in Water and Light's hands no later than the 16th.
So in order to do that, we'd have to have a special regular meeting. And then the special committee of the whole meeting. Okay. 2 minutes, yep. Okay, just wanted to make sure process-wise we're all on the same page.
Do we have any preference as to a color letter, a two-sided letter? I've gotten feedback that people throw away black and white notifications and they don't throw away color. I personally throw it all away.
I think I would be fine with just the $125 black and white to all residents, and then we have a social media person, and we can certainly blitz our social media pages with this information.
Very good.
I know you're going to put it at True Value, and or you're going to put it at those places that you guys put all your leaflets. So
very good.
Right next to the salt and snow shovels.
And Kevin's gonna.
Oh yeah.
Turn it in. There we go. Black.
Trina.
Oh, I mean, I guess I was, hoping for color. I don't know if it could be, the paper could be cut in half or cut into threes to make it go further.
I don't think that's gonna fly with Water and Light.
I'm not sure if that'll be your job with the paper cutter to separate them out, but I don't know.
My understanding is that they do all of that with the billing.
Correct. All we have to do is
So
get
it's-
all we have to do is get them the article, and
Yep.
they handle the rest.
All right. So you okay with Trina? Black and white. Okay. Okay, we'll move that forward to the now special meeting that should happen on regular meeting should happen on the 10th. Before our cow meeting, that special meeting is going to happen on the 10th.
Thank you.
Okay. As long as everyone agrees. Yes.
Sir, could you summarize what your consensus is for moving
Yes,
this to
sure.
a special regular meeting on the 10th?
So we're gonna move. We're gonna move this forward. The option 2 or what? Option 1.
Option 1,
Okay.
111.57
$111.57
a foot.
and $1 a foot.
Okay.
And the draft letter to go in the water and light bill. Right? Is that?
That's what I heard.
Okay.
So I was conferring with the council that it's not an ordinance amendment, and a resolution isn't necessary, it's a policy, so staff, Zach, will draft his report, and then the question will be to move to approve it, and that'll establish the policy, and the Public Works will implement that policy.
Okay.
So that'll be for next Tuesday,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I would like to see us put on our radar the concept of developing the ordinance change to develop the punitive sanctions and not just table it for another year. I'd like to see us keep our eye on that snowball.
No pun intended. Can we keep that on the? Can we have that item put on the next committee of the whole if time allows? For the 17th, yep, to discuss the ordinance. Everybody okay with that, Mike? You good then? Okay. All right. Thanks, Ed. That's good feedback. We will, yeah, sometimes things can get lost in the shuffle, so. Okay, anything else on snow removal fees from anyone? All right, good. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Paul, you mentioned that the ordinance already exists, that we can do this. Do we just need to attach a fee to it in order for it to attach a fine that the police department would then issue? What do we need to do?
Your ordinance is 86-226C. And what that says is that the city may issue and serve on the owner, occupant, or person in charge of the property a citation. That's all that it says right now. And when you have that situation, then your general penalty is 1-14, and that says for first offense, it's anywhere between 5 and 500, and your second offense is anywhere between 10 and 500. So that's
Okay, so
and
in
then it's up to
reality,
the officer to decide.
so
what
in
he wants to
reality,
do.
we don't really need to do anything with this ordinance necessarily. We could just enact a policy of how much we want the police department to fine.
If you want to affix a specific number to this, then you should change 86-226C to put a specific
A
number
specific
in
number
there.
would be the best, but otherwise we
Right.
can fine tomorrow
Right.
if it snowed, well,
Yes.
as soon as it
Yes.
was. It would take a few days.
You
but-
have something in place, but you're leaving it up to the discretion of the police department to do what they normally do, and my guess is that what they normally do is $30 would be my guess. And then they would probably go to 50, and then they would probably just keep going up like that. But if you want to put a specific number on it, you certainly can.
Could that number act as a floor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
For the municipal judge as well, is what I'm saying.
Right now, your floor is
$5.
$5. I think I
Right.
said $5.
You said $5.
Yeah.
So this police department could write it for 30, the municipal judge could lower it to 5.
That is correct.
But if we put in a floor of 125, nobody can go below that.
Yeah, I don't think I would say that, but that would be the idea, yes.
Okay. Why not?
Well, because the municipal judge can do whatever he pretty well wants to.
So he could go 10,000 if he wanted to?
Well,
He could go 0 if he wanted to?
He can change it to an illegal backing ticket.
Thank you. Yes, he can do
Back
that.
your car illegally,
Okay.
and your fine is $4. It's true.
Okay.
It's true.
Yeah.
Actually, that just happened, as a matter of fact. Not in this court, but somewhere else. So,
Okay, the legislature can't establish penalties, minimum penalties,
the legislature can and does all the time.
all right, but they're unenforceable?
How long do you want to talk about
All
this?
right, we'll talk some other time.
I mean, your point is incredibly well taken, and you can set a floor and you can set a ceiling, and as long as you are staying within that citation, that is your range. But with a little bit of creativity, you can amend the citation to something else, and now you're out of the range. So I mean, that's where I was going.
Definitely something we can talk about more at the next, when we bring it up again, talk about the ordinance. Okay, thanks, everybody. Next up, number 15, discuss preparation of agendas and council packets. I'm not sure who wants to lead this, but feel free. Dave, go ahead.
I request this, I reviewed it with the mayor. Currently, agendas are prepared on Thursday before the council agendas. Packets are due by the next day, and they're distributed by the end of the day Friday. And there's a couple of things I would suggest you consider changing to improve the process and save staff time. That the agendas, the draft agendas be distributed on Monday to the mayor, council, city administrator, and staff for input. That any changes or edits to the agenda be submitted to the clerk by Wednesday at noon. The information and documentation be submitted to the clerk by noon on Thursday and distributed by the end of the day. So this is just giving more time for everyone involved in preparing the agendas, planning for the agendas, and preparing the documentation, the information to make it more efficient. We, in a form of this, did this last week, where I talked to the mayor and the clerk.
distributed the agendas on Monday, and the packets were due for the documentation by Tuesday at noon. And for the most part, that was respected, and the clerk and I reviewed it, the entire information on Wednesday, and they were distributed by the end of the day, and I think it went pretty well, Pat. So there's a couple things there is that you're getting a draft ahead of time, so you can respond to that, and we can make changes. Everyone involved. Everyone knows what the deadline is and prepares their information, and it gets to the council and everyone involved in a timely manner so they can be prepared for the meetings. So we're just backing that deadline up, and it would be important to adhere to that. There's always exceptions, there's emergencies that come up. But I've experienced this in the past in other communities, and it's been pretty effective. And like I say, we did this in a form last week with the shorter week and the holiday.
Okay.
So what do you think?
Well, I believe I believe when I saw the draft agenda, it definitely changed from when I got the packet. Like I believe the golf course stuff was on there and it wasn't. So it would prevent surprises like that. But I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really. I mean, right now the council doesn't see the draft agenda. Only the city council president, mayor, and city, and staff sees it. So I don't know. It would be.
So with this policy, everyone would see it
Okay, and then
on Monday.
If I say and then anybody can give input and say they want to, if they have their own agenda and they want to, like say Trina wants to eliminate flooding on River Road permanently, she can put that on the agenda. Or, I mean, right now there's kind of a process where it goes through city staff, and ultimately Mayor Tome and I would review it and make sure that items are legitimate and have backing and all that good stuff.
I believe I couldn't quote the ordinance, but I would be surprised if the ordinance does not allow a council member to put something on the agenda.
Gotcha. And I'm fine with it. I just trying to figure out the process and if it's how it would be different.
Well, this is just stepping it back a little bit and getting the council involved and city attorney earlier to react to it and giving us time to prepare for it.
Gotcha. Trina, go ahead.
Oh, I guess I was wondering, how would we get the draft on Monday?
By email?
Possibly. Although I would love to see a little bit about the topics that we're going to cover ahead of time, I can't imagine having the time to check over the draft and then compare it to the new version over the weekends. I can't fathom it. I'm imagining last week staff was more motivated since it was a holiday week with a shortened schedule. So probably a little bit more difficult other times, but I'm not sure.
Mike?
I think it's fine for any council member to suggest an agenda item. I think what we're looking at here is the process of making sure we have the documentation in a packet and it's done in an efficient manner, and that as you said, there's always going to be exceptions. I made one hours after we had this conversation for Matt last week about the stormwater issue, and I know they had DT on Friday. He talked to me on Tuesday after a meeting, and Pat was right there, and she said, you have to have it to me at 8 o'clock in the morning, and Matt said, okay, I'll do that. But that's what we're trying to prevent, is having 6 or 7 agenda items that are coming in and packets aren't ready until 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. I do think we want to constantly keep this process as efficiently as possible, especially in the interim. We have someone here to help us now, Dave, but for 3 weeks before that, it was not an enjoyable experience to figure out how the workflow of all this stuff, how it was going to get into an agenda item.
Yeah.
I look at the agendas myself. There are things that I've never seen before. I can find out about those items by talking to staff members, following up with Matt, who's going to be the person that's going to be presenting the information, who's going to be there to speak. That's my first question, really, just to understand where the items are coming from. So I'm open to anything, but I think the intent of this is to refine this and have a much more efficient method, and that we have a cutoff line to say, sorry, you're going to have to wait until the next meeting. If you look at our fee schedule, there is always the option for someone to pay $500 to have a special city council meeting. I believe it's $500. There's always an option out there, and I think that we're extremely flexible as trying to be understanding that there's timelines, but we also have to let people know that if you don't have your information to us early, and as early as possible, that you're going to have to go to an alternate route, which is paying for a special meeting. I think we have the right to do that. We have a large agenda. Normally, it's 9:30 tonight. There's no reason that we have to just accept anything that's submitted until Friday at 5 o'clock. I think that's unrealistic. So.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out if this is going to help or hurt the fact that we get items at our desks at the last hour before our meetings.
We're trying to avoid that as much as possible with the
Because
change.
there's times that we see something for the very first time, other than the agenda item, when it's at our desk and we don't have time to review it prior. And I want to make sure whatever happens, or whichever way we go with it, I want to make sure that that's going to be, resolved, because it's hard to make a decision on something you haven't had time to review.
The only way that you will solve that problem is by solving that problem. Just say no. I mean, you try to accommodate these last minute things, and if you just start having your policy that says no, have a special meeting or wait, that's how you.
Make a motion to table item number 7 because there's no documentation. I received it 3 minutes ago.
Yep.
And you come back to the next meeting. That's how you
what-
implement that
That's what
policy.
you do.
Yep.
You have to control your own agenda.
Okay.
I mean, that's really the bottom line.
Trina?
Oh, now I'm trying to remember what I wanted to say. I would love for the packets to be completed as of, Thursday and printed by noon Friday. That would be wonderful. I'm just not sure if I can fully expect that for the extra mini emergencies that pop up. I don't know. But I know you're talking about controlling the agenda, but I know.
Okay. Well, what do you guys want to do here? You want to make this change and make this a policy, Ed?
You're recommending this, Dave? You think
I
it'll
am.
make everything more efficient?
I am. Like
I'm
to
in
try.
favor of it.
Having been involved as council president before the mayor, I can't see how this wouldn't do anything but improve the situation. I really don't. I think it sets expectations that if you're going to be on the agenda, you have to have your documentation, supporting documents, plan to be at the meeting. That's what we're looking at here. I don't see how, I'm giving a recommendation that we go in this direction as well, just for staff as well. Is navigating this stuff and getting things in a timely manner, because putting the agenda and the packet together shouldn't be the only thing that David's working on all week long. There are other things you're working on as well. This needs to kind of fit into the timeline, and we need to have it printed and ready for the council. So,
Anybody else?
So move it forward for action then, for the 17th, or how do we?
So there'll be a written policy put together for approval?
I'll
on the
just
17th?
draft a memo and suggest a motion, and it'd be a council policy once you adopt it, and then we would follow through with it.
That all sound right?
Sounds fine by me.
All right, seeing no objections to that.
Okay, we'll proceed.
Okay, thank you.
One step at a time.
All right, number 16, continue review of ordinance, repeal and recreate Chapter 18 of the City of Columbus Code of Ordinances concerning buildings and building regulations. We discussed this a little bit at the last meeting.
With your indulgence, I would like, and because it's approaching late hour again, I'd like to combine 16, 17, and 18, and I can summarize all of this relatively quickly, I think. There's a little bit of triage work that the council needs to do at your meeting on the 17th, and that is to adopt Resolution 2319 to set fees for the building inspections. Tonight you approved the building inspector contract, which takes effect on 1/1 of 2020. That has an increase in certain fees that the building inspector is going to be charging the city. The Resolution 2319 will be adopting the city's add-on to the building inspector fee that it charges the applicants, and that's generally a 10% across the board increase. So if the building inspector starts charging on January 1 and you haven't kept up with him, you're going to be running behind the 8 ball for a while until you do. So item 17, which is 23-19, should be a relatively simple procedural matter that I would recommend that you simply move forward onto the next agenda to make sure you get that done. Item 16 is a review of the building code, and I want to explain what's in your packet, and there is no action that's required on this tonight or tomorrow or at the next meeting, except for 2 specific points that I'll get to in a minute. The building code ordinance that you're looking at is a complete throwing out of your existing code because it's not good, and redrafting the code based on several other municipalities that I've drafted building codes for. What you have in your packet is a kitchen sink, and there are all kinds of things that are thrown in that you may or you may not like. Again, no action is required tonight. I don't even want to really have much conversation about this tonight because I want to explain what you're looking at before we actually start getting into the meat and potatoes of this. The one area that is important for you to weigh in on at some point in time, and now I have to find it, so give me just a second, is section, hang on. There it is, 1816. That is the one, every municipality requires building permits for different things. The current language that you have in your ordinance is horrible. It doesn't say anything. So what I did is gave you a starting point, and you may not want to require a building permit for HVAC for furnaces. You might want to. That's the one area that when you're starting to look at this, that's the main question. Number one is, what exactly do you want a building permit for? What do you want the inspector to be looking at when he's out there doing his thing? So otherwise, this is you will not find much of what is in your current code in what you're looking at that's in your packet tonight, because I basically threw most of it away. It's very, very out of date, so you're starting with some new stuff. The draft that you have in your packet is something that Matt and Dion, the building inspector, and I sat down and went through, and Dion said, yes, no, I don't do this, I do this, you really need to have this, you have to take this out. So it's been thinned out from where I started one time already, and now I think it's in pretty good shape to have a conversation, at least with what you want to start focusing on later on, okay? Having said that, there are two specific areas that I need to pull out of this, and you need to adopt at your next meeting, as it's just a separate ordinance, as basically a Band-Aid. And that is 1810 and 1811, and 1840, 41, and 42. The City of Columbus and General Engineering is recommending that the city become what's called a delegated authority for building code, for commercial building code review. And I think we talked a little bit about this a few months ago, and those 5 sections that I mentioned are what will allow general engineering to do plan review for commercial properties and commercial building issues that are going to come up in the city, instead of having the person who's putting the building in go get state-approved plans and go through the SPS process and that. So this will streamline that process considerably, and it's preferable to have that in place by January 1. So those 5 sections that I just cited, I'd like to pull out, bring back to you at the regular council meeting on the 17th as an ordinance, just to get those on your books, and then we can come back and circle back and take care of the rest of this at your leisure, basically. Okay? And then, having said that, once again, I think I've used that term twice now, when you get to item 18 on your agenda, which is chapter 20, that is the property maintenance code. The property maintenance code has not been changed at all. What you have in front of you is what is on our books right now, with the exception of it's been pulled out of the building code and made a separate chapter, for ease, if nothing else. And the only issue there is that the property maintenance code and the building code need to be approved at the same time, for the sole reason that when you repeal chapter 18, the property maintenance code is going to go away. So they need to run together until you're satisfied that you want to approve them both at the same time. Okay? Hopefully all that made sense.
Yeah.
With the exception of those 5 sections that I'm going to pull out for your next meeting, there's no rush on this. But obviously, you know, it would be nice to get it cleaned up and improved upon sooner than later.
Do you mean 5 sections plus chapter 20?
No, just the 5 sections.
Okay.
The 5 sections in chapter 18, as you're looking at it here, I just need to pull out and make a separate. Yes, exactly, correct.
You need that approved by next meeting, but 18 and 20 the remainder, other than the 5 sections, can be workshopped further.
Yes. Yes, well, and Ed had suggested at the last meeting that your ordinance committee, whatever exactly that is, I'm not sure yet, but your ordinance committee could start with this. That's fine. And if you want this to be the kick the tires on the ordinance committee, this is a nice meaty chapter to dig your teeth into. So I have no problem with that, but this came around because the building inspector and Matt and I thought that it was time to bring this forward, and the delegated authority stuff is what the kick in the pants was. So.
Okay.
So I'll have an ordinance. I'll have an ordinance for you, a short version ordinance for your next meeting, and then that resolution 2319 needs to be adopted.
Questions?
One question, and I don't know if it's addressed in the building code right now, but permit required, it says no owner or contractor may commence construction of any building or mechanical system or being constructed of any project affecting the interior or exterior of a structure, yada yada. The point I'm trying to get at with the building code is that the owner of a property that's going to do a remodel or do anything that falls under the parameters of the requirements for building code, if they didn't get a permit, they could get in trouble for not pulling a permit and doing a certain amount of work should the building inspector find out, hey, you just rewired your entire house and didn't pull a permit. Ultimately, where does the responsibility fall if a contractor comes into a private residence and decides they're going to do work and they haven't pulled the permit? Who's required to pull the permit ultimately? Or are there different ways to address that in here? The point I'm trying to get at is
really
that
good question.
if you have contractors that are working within a municipality and they're licensed and they're qualified to pull a permit, and they come and give you a bid and say, the permit's included in my estimate, and then they don't come in and get a permit and they do the work, that's where I'm trying to divide that a little bit within this code. So there is accountability for the contractor and the homeowner, but ultimately who's going to be responsible for how it's done?
That's ultimately going to be the homeowner's responsibility, in my opinion, and I see this happen both ways all the time, where either the homeowner gets the permit or the building contractor, as part of the deal, pulls the permit. But ultimately, it's the homeowner's responsibility, because you're supposed to have that visibly displayed in the front window of the house.
Correct.
Supposed to.
Supposed to.
Yeah, so I mean, that is one of the, I can write whatever words you want me to write, and I'll never be able to fix that.
Okay.
I mean, completely, because there's gonna be times when it just doesn't happen.
I know there are certain things, like a furnace. Even if you're not remodeling and your furnace dies in the middle of January and you need to call a contractor, if it's a requirement, that should be the contractor, obviously, because they have the ability to pull a permit. But if it's a Saturday or Sunday and they're closed, what agreement is there really that they're ever going to have a permit or an inspection on that furnace? And if something should go wrong with that furnace in a year later and there was some sort of accountability, it just goes completely undocumented.
It's called full employment for attorneys.
There you go.
No, I understand your point, and we can certainly talk about that further, and I'm not sure there's a good answer for that.
Okay, just thought I'd plant the seed with you. Thank you.
All right. Ed?
Which sections need to be done by next meeting again?
1810 and 1811, that's the adopting
Right.
the SPS codes. And then 18, 40, 41, and 42 is the municipal delegated authority stuff.
I thought you said 16 needs?
Oh,
work
no,
too?
16 is the one that 16 is the base for everything that you're gonna wanna talk about from this
Okay.
point forward, because this is what a permit is required for.
Okay, but that's not time
That's
sensitive.
not for next time.
Very good.
No, you currently have something on your books that tells you when you need to get a building permit. It's squishy and it's not very well thought out or drafted, but it's there.
These other sections do need to be approved on the
Yes.
17th,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, everyone's okay with moving this forward to the 17th for the items Paul described? Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Paul, for knocking out 16, 17, and 18.
One question before
Yeah.
we move on. Does it make sense? I know we can workshop Chapter 18 and Chapter 20, but if Chapter 20 has been separated, does it make sense for us to just adopt 20 before the turn of the year to have something in place and then workshop it, or not?
If you're okay with that, that's fine. Like I said, there's been no substantive changes to the property maintenance code. We simply just pulled it out.
Okay.
So and it's on the books until you repeal 18.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that's why they need to go together.
Okay, so they both still exist, all right.
Right.
Good.
Okay, are we good? Okay. Okay. So that brings us to our next agenda item, number 19, convene to closed session per state statute 19.85, sub 1, sub C, considering employment promotion, compensation, performance evaluation data for any public employee over which a governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically the senior center director. I would need a motion to go into closed session.
Second?
A motion and a second to go into closed session. Any discussion? Okay, Pat, if you could please take the roll call.
Okay, yep.
Gray. Johnson. Reed. Tylen. Tome. Traxler.
Aye. We are now in closed session. We will not be returning to the air tonight, so thank you. Have a good night.